Welcome to Roscommon County Board of Commissioners work session, March 22nd, 2023. I'm going to add a number 6 on there, time sensitive, Vance for 911. Number 1, do we have Stacy for the Lake Special Assessment District on Zoom? Okay, yep, you can go ahead. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We've prepared a PowerPoint to give you an overview of all 3 lakes, and Kyle O'Mara is going to share that. Can everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you turn the volume?
Yes, my volume is up. All right. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to provide you with an update on the lake levels in Roscommon County. Next slide, Kyle. So what we would like to go through is just some generally of the background and goals of what the county has directed in terms of the lake levels, and then a little bit of a dive into each of the different lakes that we're working on, and we're working on them all at the same time, and then questions from the board. So when the board retained both Spicer Group and Fahey Schultz, we were basically given a set of what I would say common goals for all 3 lake levels. 1, establish special assessment districts for each of the 3 lakes. 2, revise the lake levels where necessary to basically align the lake level with what is happening on the ground, so that the lake levels are accurate. 3, work towards getting to the county to a spot where the lake levels can be professionally managed and operated. And 4 and 5 really go into number 3 in order to provide a situation where we can have professional and accurate operating and maintenance of the lake levels. We need to be able to utilize the best technology and best practices for these lake levels. That will require improvements to all 3 lake level control structures to allow us to do that. And then the 5th is to ensure that residents and property owners on these 3 lakes, as a good transparency, we have developed an email to continue to provide as much information to property owners as possible, and we'll go into that in more detail in a bit. Okay, the first one is Houghton Lake. So as you may know, we have went through the process of establishing the special assessment district boundaries for Houghton Lake. The circuit court judge signed that order on December 20th, 2022. And so now we have who's in and who's out of that special assessment district. That was a result, to the next slide, of many meetings with property owners and townships to get to that spot. So this slide shows the established boundaries of the special assessment district, and we intend to use the methodology that we used in Houghton Lake for all 3 lakes to provide consistency throughout the entire county. So the next step, now that we have the boundaries of the special assessment district, is to get an accurate lake level order through circuit court. You are blessed with a very unusual hydrology in terms of both Houghton and Higgins Lake with regard to how the lake levels could. So we, in order to get the best possible results for the county and the residents of Houghton Lake, it's necessary to do a couple things before we go to court to get an order for updating the legal lake level and to perform improvements. So the first one is some base engineering information as to what might be possible for the lake. What I mean by that, given the hydrology of the lake, and if you have questions about this, Spicer Group representatives are on the call and can explain it better. But basically, the hydrology and the watershed of the lake does not allow you the opportunity for perfection on either Higgins Lake or Houghton Lake, meaning that regardless of the wants and needs of the resident, going to be able to provide you a static lake level 365 24/7 because of rainfall, downstream concerns, upstream concerns, weather, temperature, etc. And so before we send a survey out to the property owners, which is the next step that we hope to do this summer, we need some baseline engineering about what is possible. So that means there will be an area where, from an engineering standpoint, it may be possible to keep the lake. So that may mean it's higher in the spring than some people like it, and lower in the fall than some people like it, but higher in the spring is necessary to get it as high as we can in the fall, as an example. And so that engineering is necessary to see what those sideboards are. And we want that information before we survey the public, the property owners around Houghton Lake, because we don't want to offer a lake level to property owners on a survey that's not possible. And so we are forming a series of questions for the Houghton Lake residents about where do you like the water on Memorial Weekend? What are you willing to have as a water level on Memorial Weekend versus 4th of July weekend versus, you know, Labor Day weekend? And so we have to balance what's possible from an engineering standpoint, what the residents would like to see, and then what is permittable through the state, through Eagle. And then once we have a solution that we think is the best balance of all those different things, only then take that to a circuit court hearing to update the lake level and move forward with an improvement project. Next slide, Kyle. All right, so then I'm going to, we can stop on Houghton and ask questions about Houghton before I move on to Higgins.
Yes, Stacy, I have questions on Houghton Lake. When that was originally done, it was to set an assessment district to help pay for the maintenance and operation of the dam.
Yes.
Somehow it moved to changing the legal lake level of Houghton Lake. How did we get to that point?
So great question, Commissioner. So we are at that point because we now know that the established legal level of Houghton Lake is not what the physical level is. And so where the level is being operated and maintained is not at the same level that the legal level is. And in order to get permits for much needed improvements to Houghton Lake, Eagle will not give a permit for something where the legal level is different than what you're asking for a permit for. And
I have a question.
Yeah.
The legal level is established what the legal level is. And because it's been managed at a much higher, level than than the legal level is, wouldn't it be possible to get that legal level down to where the legal level is currently by modifying the dam to a much lower level?
So all of that is, so it is possible. We have to go through the engineering to see what is possible, what the residents wants, what Eagle wants, and then the court will ultimately determine what the best level is. But right now we know that what those two are. I'm not sure if we could, Houghton Lake is being operated, it is my understanding, higher than what, significantly higher than. And so I think there would be property owner concerns to take it down to the legal level immediately. So I think that it makes the most sense, and what we've heard from the county thus far, it makes the most sense, and I believe we have resolutions to allow us to do this, to take all of those factors, permittable, engineering wise what's possible, and then what the residents want, and have the court factor those into an updated level. What that
Is there some kind of environmental impact study that's going to be done on that if they if they change that legal level upwards? And isn't the DNR always concerned with opening up, not having any dams at all on any of our lakes? I know we fight that on Higgins an awful lot. They want the dam actually removed on Higgins, and I'm wondering why not remove the dam on Houghton?
So we have an established legal lake level. And so I'm not going to use the word environmental impact study because that's a very specific term in engineering standards. What I will say is that we have to apply for a permit through Eagle. There are certain environmental conditions that will be reviewed by Eagle when authorizing a permit. Moreover, when you go to court to update the legal lake level, there is a very specific set of factors that the circuit court judge must consider in setting a new level, and those will be considered also.
Right. What is the cost for doing the examination, I guess, of modifying the legal level? What is going to be the cost for that?
So I believe the county has received an engineering study to do the preliminary engineering in terms of updating the legal level from Spicer Group. And so I don't have those numbers. I think we can provide those to you later with regard to that issue. I can tell you that your water control structure is in need of repairs. Without updating the legal level, I can guarantee you, you will not get a permit for those repairs of the water control structure.
That makes a lot of sense, and I think Houghton certainly needs to be increased.
And I'm not
to where
advocating
it should
increasing
be.
or not increasing. We have to go through the process.
Right. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions on Houghton Lake before we switch to Higgins Lake? All right, I assume by the silence there is no, and so we'll move on to Higgins Lake. Next slide, Kyle. So where we are at right now is in the process of establishing the special assessment district boundaries for Higgins Lake. In order to do that, we are working with the engineers, and you can go to the next slide, Kyle. We've reviewed each of the plats along Higgins Lake. We've met with township supervisors and the assessors to discuss the special assessment district boundaries. We've reviewed the county equalization data information, and we have a working draft of the special assessment district boundaries. And that's the next step, is to take to court a proposed special assessment district boundary in order to confirm the boundaries and to have a special assessment district itself. So next slide, Kyle. So we know, I guess go back one. Yeah, okay, so we know, and I'll cover this more in a couple of slides from now, that we want to get this right, and property owners are more aware of who holds an easement for lake access, et cetera, or not than we do. So we will be sending out a property owner survey about access to Higgins Lake. I think that will go in the mail, and you should receive it in the next week or so. But while we are doing that, and this is where you can go to the next slide, Kyle, sorry about that. We also recognize that Higgins Lake is going to take a while to get to the point where we're all finished with the process. Step one is just the boundaries. Step two is then evaluating what should the lake level be in improvements, long-term improvements to the lake level. And that is going to take a significant amount of time given the environmental, hydrologic, engineering concerns to do that. So we know that we can't wait 2 years before that final long-term solution happens, before we need some interim fixes before we can get to the final fix. So what we have proposed to the county is that some temporary fixes to the water control structure take place immediately to help better maintain and operate the lake level. And those are going to require, and then we have an interim based on those interim fixes, an interim maintenance and operation manual that should be followed based on those interim fixes. That is going to require an Eagle permit and will exceed our $10,000 limit. And so, and will require some interim financing. So we are hoping that as soon as we get through the district boundary setting with the court, that we can immediately go and make some interim fixes through the permitting process to allow for better operation and maintenance of the lake level, and then have the engineers put together an operation and maintenance manual that will work in the interim until we can get those long-term fixes, long-term lake level settled by the court. And so those are the two big things we're hoping to do for Higgins Lake this year, hopefully quickly so that we can get the fixes in play. First, set up the district, and we need that for interim financing. We can't pay for the interim fixes until we have the money to be able to do that. So we're going to send out, you can go to the next slide, Kyle. We're going to send out a mailing that's actually going out tomorrow about a survey to property owners about who has access to the lake and how they have it. We're going to have a webinar. You can go ahead and fill out the survey immediately online if you'd like. But if you have questions, we're going to have a webinar as to how to fill out the survey. And that property owner survey will be open until May 5th. And that will provide us information about better as to who's in and who is out. After that, next slide, we will be having township meetings in both of the townships to get information for those of you who aren't as internet savvy as others at the township meetings, to gather more information about that, setting the district boundary process. After we collect all that information, then we are going to have final recommendations and take those to a circuit court hearing to get the boundary set. Once we have that, then hopefully we'll be in a great position to move as quickly as possible towards those interim fixes. And with those interim fixes, have an operation and maintenance manual to go with those interim fixes. When I say as quickly as possible, any activity on the water control structure requires a permit by Eagle. And so that doesn't happen overnight. If we go like gangbusters, our goal is to be able to have some improvements before winter. But we'd have to be going like gangbusters with no hurdles to cross. And so we are, I know Spicer has already submitted a proposal to allow to get started on the temporary fix and the operations manual. And so we are going to move as quickly as possible, but we also want to do things by the book. So that is our goal with that. After we get the interim fixes, after we get the boundaries, then we'll start working on that long-term level with more property owner surveys to the Higgins Lake communities, kind of like the ones we have in Houghton Lake, about what would you like the level to be given the hydrology of the watershed, et cetera. And then eventually, and when I say eventually, it will not be in 2023, if we're lucky in 2024, a second court hearing about those permanent fixes and permanent revisions to the lake level order. So that's kind of the direction we're moving for Higgins Lake. And so with that, I would imagine that there are going to be questions.
I have a few questions.
Yes.
Yeah, who has more input on the legal lake levels when you're going through this, Eagle or the property owners on the lake?
So
how's that weighted?
So there is no weight. So there is a requirement. So I'm going to say property owners on the lake have a say, but it's really the court going through. When the court sets a level, the statute provides specific considerations that the court has to come into play. And so what property owners want to see is only a consideration. Downstream property owners, riparian rights, a number of things come into play with the court setting that. The circuit court judge is certainly going to listen to the wants and desires and needs of the property owners, but there is more to it than that. In addition to the court setting the lake level, to make any updates to the water control structure, you must also get an Eagle permit. There's a Court of Appeals opinion that says just because you have a lake level that says this doesn't mean that Eagle has to give it to you. You have to meet both orders. You have to get a permit and do that. So before we go to court, we want to come up with a level that balances, like I said, what is possible from an engineering standpoint, what the property owners want, and be able to present that to the court naming all those considerations, and also something that is permittable by Eagle. It is a tremendously fun balancing act, but we're going to do our best to meet those. Great question.
Good. Another question. Can the LLCS be modified by the DNR without permission from Eagle?
Can you say that again? The LLCS, what are you meaning by
Yeah,
that?
the lake level control structure, can it be modified, or can things be done to the dam by the DNR without permission for a permit modification from Eagle?
So the county is the only entity that can make modifications to the water control structure itself. And any modifications to the water control structure would need a permit through Eagle.
Okay, so the county would have to get the permit from Eagle,
Yes,
is what you're saying? Okay, so that's what we're working towards, okay.
yes, yes.
I've got a real quick email that I received from one of my constituents. All the commissioners received it, and I'll give them a copy, but he has several questions. And I'm just gonna read through this really quick. And he said, having viewed the YouTube recording on March 8th, 2023 board meeting, I want to comment on something I heard toward the end of the session. It appears as though the board is intending to set up a special assessment district for the purpose of repairing and rebuilding the dams on Higgins and Lake St. Helen, and that the board has already moved forward with Houghton Lake. It also appears that Commissioner Russo's comment that he wants the board to have an attorney who worked on the Higgins Lake Special Assessment District, that would be you, set up the SADs for the other lakes. It was mentioned more than once that he would like these special assessment districts set up before a thorough investigation and repair or replacement plan for the dam is determined. I know you covered a lot of this, but I'm still going to continue. As a Higgins Lake area resident, I'll address only the Higgins Lake Dam situation. I believe that an assessment and plan of action should be done prior to any special assessment district being created. I would think it important to know exactly what the problem is that we intend to remedy. If repair is necessary, or is replacing the dam the only solution? Are there management practices that need to be utilized to make the specific repairs or replacement more suitable for future operation? In general, I do not understand why the county would want to set up a special assessment district without knowing exactly what the plan should be to utilize such. To quote an old adage, I believe this would put the cart before the horse. I have heard in previous board meetings that the attorney, Mrs. Hissong, believes that it would be a cost benefit to set up the SADs for all the lakes at the same time. I question whether this approach would be more beneficial to the county or simply to the firm Mrs. Hissong represents. How is it that the county management of legal representation is handled? I would like to suggest that the county consider other firms before continuing to employ Mrs. Hissong. As a fiduciary to county funds, I would think, especially in the light of recent county financial situation, the preferred course of action would be to include seeking the best cost to get this job accomplished. My own research indicates that although Mrs. Hissong may be one of the most qualified to set up such districts, she's also one of the most expensive. Were there other firms that were considered or compared for this task? I suggest that being prudent in this manner may be justified. I want to state that I'm not against the formation of a special assessment district in order to operate the dam more effectively. I am, however, of the opinion that it would be a wrong move to have the SAD set up without clear knowledge of what the county board needs to accomplish, and that such a plan be agreed upon by the county board of commissioners. I was encouraged by the comment Commissioner Wilson made in the course of the conversation, where he seemed to indicate that he thought a plan of action was necessary to be created. I suggest that this plan is the responsibility of the commissioners to create, not the responsibility of a SAD attorney. And before any such district be created, that plan should be devised, respectfully submitted, Greg Seemack. Now, you covered a lot of that, and I can appreciate that, but was there anything in this email that you could address that you haven't already addressed or are going to address in this meeting?
Certainly. In my opinion, the special assessment districts are not being set up for any one project. Technically, the special assessment district should have been set up 50 years ago because they're for the continuous operation maintenance, and improvements of the established lake levels. Every established lake level, in my opinion, should have a special assessment district. So, and the boundaries of those special assessment districts are not implicated based on any one specific project or improvement or lake level. They're basically when whoever made the decision from a property owner standpoint to go to the County Board of Commissioners to set up an established lake level, that's when it was decided that it was possible to have special assessment districts. And those don't change based on a project, based on a lake level at all. Why do I think it's important to have all three of these set up at the same time? One, because they all three need to be set up because you have three different established lake levels that don't have districts, and you have requirements for work on all three of them. I also think it makes sense from a financial standpoint to do them all three at the same time. You have the same consultant set working on them, and we are using basically the same meetings to go through all lake levels, the same formats of different documents and webinars and everything else. If you have three different attorneys and three different engineering firms working on three different lakes, you miss the economies of scale and experience that you learn from each of the other lakes, and often working with the same townships and providing that level of service that the county is demanding. As to why they pick me versus someone else, I'll let the county board decide that. But so far, I think we have been very successful in moving forward on each lake and meeting the county's goals in terms of transparency, good communication, and outcome in terms of, and also in timeliness.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That helps a lot.
You're welcome. Are there any more questions about Higgins Lake before we move forward?
I have a question from the chair. What was the selection process back in last year in selecting this particular law firm? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I pulled it.
Okay, were any other firm, you must know, were any other firms considered?
Not at that time.
Not at that time. Okay, so we just selected that firm. Okay.
You can move forward.
All right. Next, we're going to go to Lake St. Helen. And Lake St. Helen is going through the same process that the other two lakes are. Again, this did not have a special assessment district boundary, and we are working on that very vigorously right now. So what we can tell you, and go to the next slide, is that we need a boundary, but when we also looked at this, we again noticed, you're batting 1,000 here, where the physical lake level is and where the legal lake level is are at two different locations. Lake St. Helen is operating above, in general, the established legal lake level. So again, because it's going to be a requirement for getting any permit, that the physical level and the design level and the legal level all align. When we go in to set the boundaries of the special assessment district, we are also going to ask for an update of the legal lake level itself. So with that, to get started, we have met with the township supervisors and assessors to discuss the assessment district boundaries. We have also reviewed all the plats around Lake St. Helen. We've reviewed all the data, and we have a good starting draft of the special assessment district boundaries. Again, go ahead, Kyle. We need a little bit of property owner information to help us with regard to the special assessment district boundaries and the lake level. The county reports to us that there are less concerns about what the, or I don't want to say complaints, property owner communications to the county about the lake level for Lake St. Helen in comparison to the other two lakes. So we're hoping we can accomplish all of this in one court hearing to expedite the proceedings and to save costs. But we do want to have a webinar and a property owner survey to make sure that we're gathering as much information from your constituents as possible. So we intend to have webinar, survey, township public informational meetings, and then we will go to circuit court with regard to Lake St. Helen. One more item I forgot to mention in Higgins Lake, and I want to go through the resolutions that we have for each. For Houghton Lake, we need to have a resolution to spend more than $10,000. That was just something we needed to update for 2023. Lake St. Helen, a resolution talking about the survey, the lake level revisions, and that these improvements to the water control structure will be more than $10,000. For Higgins Lake, same thing, the $10,000, the temporary and permanent improvements paid for by the special assessment district, that's also in the resolution so we can get started. Again, we have to move quickly if we're going to try to get those done by the end of the year. And then another resolution that I did not discuss, I failed to discuss, and that is a resolution to allow Fahey Schultz to appear in the other litigation regarding Higgins Lake. As you are aware, the Supreme Court denied leave and remanded back to circuit court. And so there will be a discussion of the maintenance and operation of the lake level in those proceedings. I have met with Roscommon County's counsel with regard to that, and any change in operation, etc., requires a change in the lake level order itself, which is the case that I'm representing the county on. And so county, for the Roscommon County in that matter, agrees that we should have a presence in those proceedings with along with your current counsel. So we also have a resolution to allow that to happen. Those have to work hand in hand. And so with that, any questions on Lake St. Helen, or any of the resolutions that we've provided to the county board?
Go ahead.
I have some questions. I'm curious about why the resolutions for Lake St. Helen, Houghton Lake, and Higgins Lake are different. What, I don't understand the difference on why we have to bring in a co-counsel who's very expensive in addition to the existing counsel that is already on the lake. I mean, what are we talking about?
So
Since you're a party to the other lawsuit, that's probably not appropriate, Commissioner Ostergen, for you to ask that question.
No, I can take part in discussions. I can't take part in the voting and such. It is appropriate for me.
So you asked a couple of different questions, so I'll attempt to answer those. Why? The first question I thought you answered, or question you had, Mr. Commissioner, was why are there different resolutions required for the different lakes? Because we're taking different actions. As an example, with Higgins Lake, and we're in different parts of the process for each. With regard to Higgins Lake, that's the only one that needs temporary improvements before a long-term solution. And so that's why that resolution looks different than the other ones. And for all three, we're asking for the $10,000 resolution. And then in Lake St. Helen, we came back and asked for, in December, a resolution to set up the special assessment district, but we were not aware of how different the legal lake level and the physical level was until we got into it. And so that's why we're asking for this updated resolution. We've reviewed all of these resolutions with the county's bond counsel and financial advisors, and they agree with us that these resolutions are necessary. That's the first question. With regard to—
It seems that the resolution though is adding you into the current litigation.
So, sir, I was getting to that one. You asked me why the three resolutions for the three lakes were different, and then you asked the second question. And so the second question is, there's an action about the operation and maintenance of the lake level, and that's a mandamus action. Okay, basically saying the county needs to do something. We know that it is going to require a deviation from the current lake level, even to do these temporary permits and get permits. And you cannot accomplish a deviation from the lake level in the litigation that was at the Supreme Court. It can only take place, a deviation from that court order can only take place with all the property owners being involved through the court hearings in Part 307. It's not just the litigants. Every property owner is represented in any deviation from the lake level, and that court holds continuing jurisdiction in that action. So
I understand that, but the problem is there's already a law firm handling that part of the litigation. Why are we adding an additional law firm at great expense to the county in that litigation. There's already been 5 attorneys on this case. Matthew Zielinski is the current attorneys, Christopher Bozak, attorney for Higgins Lake Interveners, William Carey, attorney for Higgins Lake Property Owners Association, Daniel Bozak, assistant attorney for general for the Eagle, and James Demon, attorney for the Houghton Lake Interveners. Now we're going to add another attorney onto this case. It doesn't make any sense to me.
So, Mr. Commissioner, you and I have a very different opinion with regard to this. None of the attorneys in that matter are dealing with the actual court proceedings representing the entire community and updating the legal lake level. Each one of those, with the exception of the county, has very specific, I will say, adversarial position as to what they're promoting, and that cannot take place in this case. But whatever you do in your case impacts what I do on behalf of the county in the 307 case. So you and I can have a difference of opinion. I am recommending to the County Board of Commissioners, after consultation with the County Board of Commissioners counsel in the other case, who wholeheartedly agrees with me, that we appear to assist the court in going through that, negotiating those waters, pardon the pun.
Okay, it'll be fun working with you.
Mr. Chair, I would advise the board to listen to the sage wisdom advice of the Madam Controller.
And then the other thing I'd like to say with regard to that issue, because Commissioner Ostergren is a party who is represented by counsel, once I appear, I am not comfortable discussing that matter at all with Mr. Ostergren because he is represented by counsel, and it would be inappropriate for me to do so.
Again,
Well, that makes sense. That makes perfect sense.
I will speak louder because I have a tendency to speak softly. Again, I would recommend to the chair that we follow the sage wisdom advice of Madam Controller and her previous comments and limit any discussion in regard to this topic. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Stacy, the St. Helen level
Yeah.
has been running high for a long time because of mathematical error. Does DEQ take that into consideration, that we are capable of maintaining that level?
Yeah,
Any issue
great
from that?
question. So that will definitely be a consideration, Mr. Commissioner. In other counties, we've had it where the lake level has been at a level for even 50 years, but the court order is different. And we haven't had any issues with Eagle or the DNR in updating the legal level to match the legal level in those situations. We do not anticipate any issue here, but I can't guarantee it. Great question.
Does that apply if we have to replace the dam itself?
So that will be a consideration that we will definitely advocate to Eagle with regard to that. Right now, again, once we get through this process, we'll have what we'll call a pre-application meeting with Eagle, but I am not aware, based on discussions currently with the engineers, of any issues. I don't see any showstoppers with regard to Lake St. Helen.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, what else do you have for us, Stacy?
Boy, isn't that enough? I have.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
All right, you're welcome. I hope you have a lovely day.
Enjoy.
All right, bye-bye.
Number 2, Michigan State subdivision. Is Paul here? Okay, Paul, you're next.
Thank you. Nice to meet you all. What I am presenting, and I think a number of the commissioners are new, so I will run a little bit through the prior history of the opioids litigation. Back in early 2018, the county authorized my firm as well as the Bernstein firm and Tim Smith's firm to file a lawsuit on the county's behalf against a number of wholesalers, manufacturers, and retail dispensers of opioids for activity that they engaged in that we alleged exacerbated or caused the opioid epidemic in this country. For the manufacturers, it was primarily deceptive marketing of a variety of opioid prescription products. For the wholesalers, it was reckless distribution of those products. And for the retail dispensers, it was reckless dispensing of those products in violation of their corresponding responsibilities under state and federal law. Those lawsuits were combined with thousands of other lawsuits, over 4,000 lawsuits filed by other local governments across the country. And they were all consolidated in one court down in the Northern District of Ohio in Cleveland. And over the last 5 years, we've been proceeding to litigate lawsuits across the country for the purpose of seeing if we could come to a resolution on a global basis with a number of the defendants that were listed as defendants in Roscommon County's lawsuit. We created a process for if there were to be a global settlement with any particular defendant of how those monies would be distributed. And that process basically envisioned that monies would be distributed at a county level based primarily on 3 metrics. How many opioid use disorder diagnoses were reported in the county? How many opioid overdose deaths have been reported in the county? And what was the volume of prescription opioids shipped by wholesalers into that county? Those 3 metrics were basically, the thought process was those 3 metrics would be an imprecise, but as best as we could, indicator of how severe or how severe the opioid crisis was as we were evaluating from county to county to county. And it was on that basis that the percentages for each county in Michigan were established. The other thing we had to figure out for purposes of coming to global solution type settlements is when monies are allocated to any particular state, how do those monies get allocated between the state government and local governments? And there are essentially 2 different methods that one can use to approach that question. There is the default method, that is, if local governments in the state didn't otherwise agree, the default method envisions that 15% of those settlements will go to local governments, 15% of those settlement dollars will go to the state government, and 70% of those dollars would be allocated to a joint state federal task force that would control those funds. The alternative, which is the alternative that was selected when we settled the first round of settlements in these cases, was to have an alternative state subdivision agreement that would distribute the funds differently. And in particular, it envisioned a 50-50 split between, with 50% of the monies going to state government, 50% of the monies going to local government. We already agreed on that type of split in a state subdivision agreement that governed the distribution of opioid settlement dollars for 4 defendants we settled with back in late 2021. Those 4 defendants were Janssen, McKesson, Cardinal, and Amerisource, 1 manufacturer and 3 distributors. And under that settlement, the amount that is projected to be paid out over a period of years to Roscommon County will be a total of at least $1,361,065. And you've received already the first tranche of payments. You received the first two payments of about $31,000 and $33,000 from the distributors. You've already received a $192,000 payment that actually is an accelerated first 5 payments from Janssen or Johnson & Johnson, one of the manufacturers. What we are presenting to you today, let me talk about a couple other features of the state subdivision agreement. In addition to embedding into the calculation of how to distribute the monies for different local governments, it also provided that local governments that actually brought a case against these different manufacturers and wholesalers and dispensers would receive an upward litigation adjustment to reflect the fact that 5, 6, 7 years ago, that local government decided, yeah, we're going to take this on. And we believe that it's appropriate to bring this types of litigation against the industry based on the havoc that has been wreaked throughout the country as a result of the opioid epidemic. And so there was in that first settlement or first state subdivision agreement, a 12% enhancement to the recovery for local governments that actually brought a lawsuit like Roscommon County. And the state subdivision agreement, this second go around, will continue to have that 12% upward litigation adjustment for Roscommon County. The other feature of the state subdivision agreement is how it addresses attorney's fees. Way back in 2018, when we initially entered into a retention agreement with the county, they agreed that there would be a 30% contingent fee that our law firm and the others that litigated this jointly with us would receive a 30% of the recovery. We agreed to ratchet that percentage down from 30% to 15%. And that 15% will be paid through 2 mechanisms. One is a national contingency fund will pay a portion of the 15%, probably about 7% of it. And the other 7 or 8% of it will be paid off of the top of the local government share as part of the state subdivision agreement's implementation of the settlement in Michigan. So any monies coming directly to Roscommon County already reflect the fact that the fee that our firms ultimately will receive will not be the 30% that we agreed to. It's ratcheted down to 15%, and it's going to be paid out of those funds rather than separately requiring the county. How to spend those monies that the county receives. There are requirements in the settlement agreement that the majority of these funds be dedicated to opioid remediation. What does that mean? There is an Exhibit E that was presented to the county when we presented the first round of settlements, and it's carried through to the second round of settlements of a whole array of different things that the county can spend it on that are recognized as opioid remediation purposes. Everything from appropriating it to whatever community mental health substance use disorder programming is performed by the entity that implements community mental health for the county, to funding of withdrawal or medical treatment for folks who are sitting in a county jail or lockup facility, to financing fentanyl test strips for the county sheriff's office, so that if they encounter some illegal drug when they're out on patrol, they can test that drug with a fentanyl test strip and make sure that it's appropriately handled. We had a couple officers, police officers in the city of Lansing back in December who interacted with fentanyl that they came across in, I don't know if it was a raid or a traffic stop or whatever, but they were exposed to it, had to receive overdose Narcan treatment, and were hospitalized. So payment for fentanyl test strips is another example. There are about 145 different examples of things that the monies can be put towards related to opioid remediation. What we need from the county, assuming that they follow our recommendation to participate in this second round of settlements, is number one, entry or authorization to enter the participation agreements with the new 4 settling defendants. Those are Teva, Allergan, CVS, and Walmart. We envision that those 4, they're paying, I don't know, about $17 billion nationally. Of that amount, we're projecting that a minimum of $765,835 will come to Roscommon County over the next several years. So part of it is enacting the resolution that authorizes the participation in those settlements. The second aspect of that resolution, and we presented a draft resolution to you, would authorize your entry of the Michigan State Subdivision Agreement that envisions the 50-50 split of the monies that come into Michigan between state and local governments, and the litigation enhancement for folks who actually brought this case, as Roscommon County did. Let me stop there and ask if there are questions.
Anybody have any questions? It sounds like we're good, Paul. Thank you.
Okay. Let me make 2 other quick observations. There is a 5th settlement out there for Walgreens that has been proposed nationally. It is not yet clear whether and under what terms that settlement will be available for local governments in Michigan. The state had its own separate lawsuit against Walgreens that was scheduled for file in February. It's been adjourned, so stay tuned. I think there is the prospect of additional settlement monies coming with respect to Walgreens, and we're going to monitor and have continued discussions with the state about that. And secondly, there is one county who is challenging all of this. They filed a complaint, Ottawa County, in Wayne County, that challenges the entire settlement. We intervened on behalf of a number of the litigating local governments that we represent, got that case dismissed. They have now appealed it to the Michigan Court of Appeals. We think it's frivolous. We've moved for sanctions, and that motion is pending in Wayne County, and we intend to vigorously defend the settlement against their appeal. That's all I'll say about that.
Thank you. And it sounds like we're good.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Number
Do
3.
you need me further, or can I drop off?
You could drop off. Thank you very much.
Okay, good talking to you all again.
Number 3, Lake Management. I don't.
Okay.
This is Commissioner Ostergen in regards to the process for moving forward after special assessments delegated authority. So this is me.
That discussion is number one.
Well, is this about, we need to hire someone to oversee maintenance and operation?
Yes.
I'm all in favor of that, and the sooner we get someone on board, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
I'm sorry.
Put someone in charge of maintenance and operation of the,
Right. We
Structure.
were looking at Chase to do that. Is that what that was all about, or?
Well, it's something that has to be bid out and all that.
Oh, okay.
that's the direction I would lean.
Okay. Were we gonna, I submitted several things that I want to be handled in the meeting. Maybe this is the time to handle it, maybe not.
No, and
Of old business or new business or?
yeah, and there are there's a couple of things you submitted. I'll bring up in my report too
So
at the end.
I would make a suggestion. I think that Mr. Seemack very elegantly stated in his that you should have a plan of action. And this would be your time to decide what your short and long-term goals are as the Board of Commissioners for management of all 3 lake levels once you have your special assessment districts in place. Because obviously you don't have any money to hire anybody until you have a special assessment district set up for all 3 lake levels. But that should be what your plan of action is, starting from A and moving all the way. You know, you're envisioning 30, 40 years down the road. What does this look like in Roscommon County?
Right. One of the questions I forgot to ask Stacy was how long does she anticipate the special assessment districts taking to be set up on Lake St. Helen? And since they're already done on Houghton and Higgins Lake.
I could find that out and I'll get back with you, or get back with all the commissioners.
Was it gonna be 2 years, 6 months, 3 months, you know?
Oh, she was looking at the summer.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean we can't delegate the authority to someone else as they come online, each lake one at a time. But that's why we need a strategy in writing of how we're gonna proceed.
What,
Right now, Jody is entirely in charge of it from what I understand, because she's the
And I don't-
delegated authority.
I don't know if we have 2 board members work on drafting something and bring it to the board.
well, what I would like to see is we'll put this back on in 2 weeks, but I want everyone to think about it and then we'll have a full discussion from all the commissioners, you know, what they would like to see.
As far as the plan of action?
Yes.
Okay, I thought we'd done that before, but perhaps not. Then I would move that Rex and I get together on that and work that out.
Well, it's gonna take all of us, but we could present in 2 weeks what everyone's feelings are.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we do obviously need a proposed plan in writing, something that we have as an outline.
Mhm.
Fully supportive of an outline to move us forward and also to keep the public informed.
But I want to hear from every commissioner. And we'll discuss that in 2 weeks. Septical, use policy, Jody.
Okay, so I have emailed out to you prior to this meeting, and you should all have a current copy of a proposed acceptable use policy. Quick background, acceptable use policy obviously is in regards to the utilization of confidential integral information, IT services, security access, those very electronic types of systems that we are dealing with more and more frequent issues, problems, regulations, state guidelines on. That being said, there have been 2 separate audits of departments within the county by the state of Michigan. And in regards to our current renewal of MMRMA liability insurance, that we must have an acceptable use policy in place. And we must have annual training for all of the employees. Huge thank you out to Andy, who presented me with this lengthy policy to review and read and compare. This is very similar to the state of Michigan's. As you read through it, it basically just talks about your data technology, looking at those areas that are to be secured, access management, clearing your desk, clear screen, i.e. making sure that everything is put away, logged off, locked up. There is a discussion in regards to email and electronic communication where auto forwarding and personal email usage are not allowed. There are also specifics in here to what can and cannot be hooked up to your server here, obviously for security purposes, i.e. I can't bring in my own laptop from home and expect it to be hooked to a secure server without IT making sure that everything that's done is done. It's a pretty, like I said, pretty standard and a basic policy in here. Obviously, we need to be compliant with the state of Michigan for all of our links and departments. And we also thoroughly want to be compliant with our liability insurance. Do you have any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
I submitted a motion last week on the email communications and so forth, before the agenda was established. And I didn't see that motion in the agenda, so I asked to have it resubmitted. I will make the motion verbally
Well,
when the motion time comes. But
and that's what we discussed, but you can write out a motion.
I
and
did.
present it to me.
I did.
I did not see.
It was in your email. Everybody received a copy of it here. Rex, did you receive a copy?
No,
It's in, I got a copy of the email. That I
I'm
sent
sorry,
out.
is this in regard to the acceptable use policy?
it's not.
Okay.
Okay, I'll just make the motion verbally then.
I have a question on that.
Policy, thank you.
Yeah. So we're gonna have a training program for employees, correct?
Yes, sir.
Is that gonna include the board?
Absolutely. If you have access to our email or our server of any kind, that is a portion of that.
Okay, thank you.
He answered it. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Payment in lieu of insurance update. What do you guys, you know?
As you remember, Commissioner Osterden had come up with an idea for potential cost savings in regards to increasing the offerings of cash in lieu. Obviously, personnel costs for any business are normally the largest percentage that you have. Benefits are ever increasing. Started with a meeting that Commissioner Osterden held with the department heads to get opinions, buy-in, thoughts, concerns, feasibility. And then they provided myself with information on the current number of employees that could have insurance through another provider, i.e. then being eligible for cash in lieu. This does not mean that they would take it. This just means that they could take it or have an option somewhere else. So our total number of employees that are enrolled is right around 133. We were looking for a, certain, as Commissioner Osterden said, sweet spot to see if there is cost savings that comes in from that. So the information as it is accumulated is presented in front of you. This is obviously for informational purposes currently, simply because we don't have the necessary group premium adjustments that would tell you the totality of that. Jennifer wanted me to make sure from our third-party benefit administrators that I point that out to you. So currently our participation for cash in lieu, we do have 13 employees. New participants that could be eligible or would be able to take cash in lieu because they have other insurance is 15. That would make the anticipated total eligible cash in lieu participants for Roscommon County to be a total of 28. That being said, the gross total estimated cost savings would be $54,244.88. That's by the time you figure out what you're saving by not having full family on there or the eligible program, and then increasing cash in lieu payments for those that are currently enrolled. There is the estimated FICA on cash in lieu, which thank you to Noel, because I had totally forgotten about that cost, which gives you a true estimated cost savings of $40,285.13. Because this actually separates through several funds, the general fund being the one that we are most in need of money, that runs all of your courts, your clerks, your treasurer's office, jury board, elections. E911 fund would be looking at an actual savings, anticipated savings of $13,695. Road Patrol Fund, obviously both of these are millage funds. The Road Patrol Fund would actually be negative 159724. This is because they already have the highest amount of cash in lieu participants. The general fund savings would be an actual of 28,187.37. So that being said, there is an apparent savings without having that additional information. In speaking with Jennifer, I had asked her how quickly the Board of Commissioners would be able to have updated information, because what happens is the mix changes as you go through and you start taking people out and putting other members in. Your population usage mix changes, and that is where your insurance company gets to use facts to determine what your actual rates are. So that information will be your offset of that. And as soon as I do have it, I will bring it to you, because you will want to make a decision by midsummer. What will happen is, in order to make this budgetable, because just because you have the option doesn't mean you take it, and just because you take it one year doesn't mean you have to take it the next year. So we would need to know the number of participants prior to being able to finalize the budget for the next fiscal year, which means we'd have to have open enrollment like the first week of September in order to have your budget still approved by the end of November. If there are other information, questions, concerns that we should be looking at into bringing this forward to you, please let me know. Saving 28,000 is 28,000, and I'll take it.
Does this reflect unemployment insurance?
No, it does not.
So there's a savings there that doesn't exist.
No. So our unemployment insurance, we actually do not pay any unemployment insurance in regards to healthcare benefits. We are self-insured with, so I don't have any money that I have to pay into the state on behalf of these.
But if we give them cash,
That would count, yes, as their total salary.
so we'd have to pay unemployment on that.
Yes, sir.
So that's to come out of this figure also.
Yes. So if I were to take cash in lieu of additional 9,000 and they looked at my last year's worth of wages, that would be considered income. Correct.
Thank you very much, Jody. I know that had to take a lot of work to put that all together. There's a lot of administration, so I do appreciate it. But like you said, 24 grand is better than nothing.
Any other questions? Number 6, advance 91.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Appreciate the time. It's obviously run along, got a full room, so I'll keep it short. I'd like to bring before you 3 motions for next week, April 12th. The first one is we need appointments from the Sheriff's Department to the 911 Authority Board. And they have put Sergeant Josh Burmeister as a primary and Detective Angie Ackley as a secondary representative to the 911 Authority Board. The new commissioners, that is our actual governance board. They're the ones that help us make the decisions officially. Second motion is for the 911 Technical Advisory Committee. That is the part of the board that advises us on our policies, procedures, and those sorts of things. The Sheriff's Department has put Sergeant Sean Hand as the primary representative and Detective Lieutenant Mike Max as the secondary one for that. So those I'm hoping to get put on the agenda for April 12th for voting. And then the next one would be, so the second week of April, this year, April 9th through the 15th, is National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. As part of that, Carly's worked very hard to put some resolution together and a letter, and asking the board to recognize the second week through resolution of April that it is National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. as well as recognize our 911 dispatchers as officially as first responders. I can tell you there is a national initiative. Currently 18 states recognize the emergency telecommunicators as first responders. Federally, they are classified as essentially administrative support. And I can tell you, I spent 29 years in the business and we're anything but. We do have some responsibilities there. So put those together. I present them to you. You should have a copy of the resolution as well. And just would like to see that on the next agenda.
Thank you, guys. Anybody have any?
On number 3, or to recognize former.
Okay. I'll get that update to.
Thank you, Vance.
Yep.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Vance. Thank you, Carly. With that being said, we'll re-meet at 10:25. Roscommon County Board of Commissioners meeting. Today's March 22nd, 2023. It's 10:25. Meeting called to order. Pledge of allegiance. Phil, would you like to start us off? I seen you in the audience.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You're welcome. Michelle, roll call, please.
Spencer. Here. Wolfson. Ostergren.
Here.
Russo.
Here,
Milburn.
Chair.
approval of the agenda.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
I want to make sure that these things are added in that I emailed, and they include several things. Some of which are in there right now, but I want to make sure that they're business, new business and old business. Eagle findings on the Higgins Lake LLCS, the update on the rock removal. Letter to Eagle requesting report on the LLCS inspection by Scott Rasmussen. Update on the department heads. Never mind that one, that's been handled. Plan of action, that's been handled. Second Amendment, that is part of it. County emails. I want to make sure that my motion is entered into the, and I will do that verbally. I have a copy of it here.
Well, that right there, I needed that motion on Thursday.
I sent it in long before, and it is very, very clear in all of the rules for commissioners, the Michigan Association. A motion can be made during the period of time when motions can be made. They can be made verbally, they can be done in writing. Traditionally, that's a nice way to do it, but I did submit it. I have the email proof, Dave, that I can provide you that it was. So you should not have an objection for me entering in a very simple motion and having a vote on it.
I do. We'll do it in 2 weeks. I need to see the motion prior. And I have not seen it.
I think that's out of order. You cannot stop me from making a motion during the motion period time and having to vote on it.
Okay,
I'll refer to ask Jody or Michelle, was our parliamentarian on motions.
I believe in our rules, it states if somebody wants a motion written out, that it has to be that way.
That is correct.
Okay. So all that you address in here is statement by chairperson, motions and resolutions. No motion or resolution shall be voted on until the presiding officer states the motion. All motions except procedural motions and resolutions may be required to be in writing upon the demand of any member. A request to recess for purpose of writing out a motion or resolution shall be in order. That's all you have in your rules regarding
Then
motions.
we'll do a recess and we'll put it in writing. I have it all written out.
why can't you just present it to me and we'll put it on for 2 weeks?
Because it's more timely now. We've been going over the issues with email addresses now for over a month and a half.
I would like to update the board. I'm not sure if this has made it out to everybody. I do know that there were some very valid concerns on Commissioner Ostergen's part in regards to personal email usage. In general, this would would be relevant to any usage of personal cell phone, emails, those types of electronic devices. It's hard to FOIA that. I can do it. I've had past commissioners that utilize personal emails. I've had to go through their whole email accounts. So this was brought up, has been discussed, I will agree, for several months. However, the two commissioners in question, Commissioner Russo, Commissioner Milburn, have both ceased to utilize that and have created and are utilizing their roscommoncounty.net emails for all personal business. So that has happened. And I promise you, if it changes, I will let you know, because it does make my life easier to be able to use that. So.
Sure, I'd just like to make it official.
Present it to me and in 2 weeks it'll be on there.
Yes, I will forward you the email I forwarded you a week and a half ago, Dave.
Thank you. Michelle, roll call, please.
Ostergren,
I'm sorry, what is this in regard?
approve the agenda.
Yes.
Wolfson,
Did we have a motion in a second?
yes, the motion was by Commissioner Milburn, the second was by Commissioner Russo. And then discussion was not called for, but it did occur. So we are at the
Yes.
Milburn,
Yes.
Russo,
Yes.
Spencer,
Yes.
motion carried.
Number 5, approval of the minutes for 3/8/23.
I would like to add something, Mr. Chair. I believe at the last meeting, I don't believe Darlene made the last meeting, but I think that was an excuse. Is it the last meeting you did not make?
Correct.
Yeah, I believe that was an excused absence, and we did the same thing for Commissioner Milburn.
Right, but in there, it's always excused. Okay, go ahead.
That I do not put whether a commissioner is excused or not excused. I put that they're absent, because regardless of if you are excused or not, you're still not here. So I don't make it a practice. If you look back at minutes, there's been several times, and I eventually corrected Commissioner Schneider on that. I was like, you can tell me Commissioner Milburn's excused all you want. I'm not putting it in the minutes.
That's fine. At the last, you were not here at the meeting when
Correct.
when the issue was brought up. Commissioner
Yes, and that was,
Chairman Russo said that it was an excused absence.
And that's the way I'll announce it, but in the minutes.
It's okay. I just want to
Yeah.
make sure everybody
No.
was treated fairly. Darlene should be treated the same way as
correct,
as Mark.
and that's what I'm explaining, is that even though that request was made and it was brought to me by my staff, I said, absolutely not. That is not how we write our minutes. That there's a commissioner that's excused. They're absent. They're either here or they're not here. If the chair wants to recognize and state that they were excused, that their absent was excused, then that's his, but in the minutes, I'm not listing
Okay,
that.
great.
Did we do roll call?
I don't have a motion or a second.
Okay. Mark made a motion, I believe, on the
Let me
minutes.
add it to Mr.
I
Chair.
thought Commissioner Ostergren was making it, but he wanted to add stuff, so I don't really know.
I'll
So,
second it.
motion.
I'll make the motion, Mr. Chair.
I'll second it. Roll call.
Any further discussion?
Discussion. Roll call, please.
Wolfson. Russo.
Yes.
Spencer.
Yes.
Ostergren.
Yes.
Milburn.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Public comment. Okay.
I'd like to make comment, but I can't get my video to start.
Back in the back table. You got to come up here, state your name and turn the mic on.
I'd like to make a comment from the Zoom audience. Is that possible?
Yes, we will do the Zoom after we're done with the in-person, sir.
All right, I am getting a dialog box that tells me it's not possible to turn my video on because the host has it shut off. Could that be changed?
Sir, after we do the in-person, I'll call on people out there on Zoom land.
That's fine, but my question was about my video not being able to turn on because the host apparently has it shut off.
I hear what he's saying.
Host won't let him have his camera on.
Oh, because we're getting the feedback.
turn
Thank
your
you,
mic on.
Mr. Chairman. My name is John Rozick, and I'm a resident of Roscommon County for just 44 years. Actually, I would say that when I moved up here, I was up here on a 5-year plan or a 15-year plan. In any event, I was going to move away within 15 years. Well, my family and I have loved it here and remain to this day, and I can't see leaving at this point in life. But, and I want to commend you on a very orderly meeting, and I enjoy that. And I had the privilege of sitting where you folks sit back in the 90s for 7 years, and enjoyed it very much. And I thank you for your service. It's at times not an easy job, but a necessary and fundamental task if we're to have a democratic society. And it's on the resolution that is being considered in support of the right to bear arms that I wish to speak. Amendment 2 to our U.S. Constitution was proposed in 1787, and as part of the Constitutional Convention to adopt a new constitution to replace the Articles of Confederation, Articles of Federation that existed previously. And the original proposal for the Constitution that's now in effect did not contain Articles 1 through 10, commonly known as the Bill of Rights. And it was clear to the proponents of the new Constitution that if they were going to get it adopted, they needed to add what's called the Bill of Rights, guaranteeing rights against unreasonable search and seizure, freedom of speech, freedom to practice religion or not to practice religion as we see fit, and a whole host of other very important essentials. And that included in Amendment 2, the right of the people to keep and bear arms. And I am quoting from the Constitution. Why is that important, and why should we need to adopt a resolution that says what's in the Constitution already? If you allow rights to not be highlighted and brought to the attention of the citizens and residents, and right now we have a lot of residents in this country that are not citizens, and I'm not here to speak to that issue. That's not germane to this issue. And the right to bear arms is why we have the United States of America. I think we would all agree that the Revolutionary War proclaimed with the Declaration of Independence in 1776 only went forward to successful completion in the 1784 approximately, because we had arms. And if those had been confiscated, we would not have the United States of America. We would be a part of the British Empire Confederation. Why is this so important? It's right up there with the right of free speech, the practice of religion, and the right to bear arms. I think it needs to be highlighted today because we are seeing even our courts in certain jurisdictions, certainly our government officials in certain jurisdictions, already questioning and wanting to declare there is no right to bear arms. It's essential for a right to exist. It has to be respected two ways. It has to be respected by the people that are not asserting it, but respect the Constitution and say, if it's in the Constitution, it should be enforced. And it's also practiced by those that want to assert it. And there can be restrictions on the right to bear arms, and are. You can't bring a cannon into this room. Although sometimes verbally we may sound like we're being assaulted by a cannon. But what I want to say is very essential that this right be asserted and highlighted. And that's what I am speaking in support of. And what I want to conclude with is when I was a very young lad, walked to school. Okay, if I might just say that we learned how it is to be confined against our will as children. I had not smallpox, but measles, and was confined for 2 weeks to bed. We were confined a little over 2 years ago without legal authority, and that felt every bit as awful, if not more awful, than the confinement I had from the measles. We must assert these rights. Thank you very much.
I present copies of my statement to the chair of the board. Thank you. I'm going to talk slowly, so I try not to lose my place. I timed it out, which should be fine as far as the time goes. My name is Frank Pescick. I live at 6871 Rhodes Road in Houghton Lake. I've been a resident of Roscommon for 58 of my 66 years. I served in the U.S. Army from 1975 through 78, which began with an oath to serve my country and to defend its Constitution. I also served as a member of the school board in Houghton Lake for 9 years. I think Rex and I, we may have overlapped some of our service together there. The purpose of my statement today is to ask you to vote no on the resolution number 2023-3-1. Vote no. Your duty as the commissioner of Roscommon County is to manage the resources of this county, its departments and its budgets. In the business of school boards, we are called trustees, and I would equate your role to that term. We put you in a place of trust to manage these resources to create a better community for us to live in. Now, I'm not here to debate the issue of guns in our community. My time is limited, so let me just say this. No one law, statute, or ordinance is going to protect all people from acts of violence. There have been shootings in public schools, state universities, and even in our community. In situations like these, my thoughts go out to those individuals who might have been able to identify a situation and taken the action to prevent a death from occurring. I'm talking about a school administrator, a school safety officer, a deputy sheriff, all who might have had time with a troubled individual. And that individual later went on to commit a tragic event. I don't know how I could sleep after such an interaction. So let me return to the issue of trustee. with this resolution, are you looking to create in the county of Roscommon, a community that embraces the idea of laws created by lawmakers in Lansing and DC are to be ignored? Are we to expect that if this applies, then, well, why do I have to adhere to zoning laws or to taxation, or God forbid, lake levels? Should we add to our welcome signs in the community for our visitors a proud Second Amendment amnesty county? Now, one of the commissioners replied to one of my emails and said, nowhere in the resolution does it say amnesty. Well, if you were here 2 weeks ago, we heard it. The media heard it. It was a headline in the paper. So you can put flowery words on it. You can call it something else. But like one of my managers told me years ago, if it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. So I ask you to vote no on the resolution before you. Do this for the good of the community that we place in your trust. Thank you very much.
Realize that part of my time will be taken up just getting to the table.
I hope not.
Which is okay. I don't intend to take up much of your time. Good morning. My name is Phil Bendeley. I come here as a private citizen from Markey Township, and I am in full support of the Second Amendment sanctuary status for Roscommon County. What it comes down to is the Constitution, as we've heard already, that the Constitution we know is the law of the land. No other group or entity shall usurp that law unless that amendment is changed through the normal process. The current legislators in Lansing are attempting to do just that. They are passing laws that are infringing on my right to carry openly and freely or conceal, and they are infringing on my right to protect myself in my own home. And just in all manner of ways, these laws, the safe storage laws, the red flag laws that are currently going down have already been challenged in other jurisdictions, other states, and have been shot down by various courts. I have no doubt that these will also be shot down eventually through the Supreme Court. My hope is that until the courts handle this situation, our sanctuary status will protect us, law-abiding citizens, from from the dangers that are out there. I'd like to be able to know that I can carry properly, or that I don't have to worry about someone coming into my home and saying, I don't think that is secured enough and we want to take it away from you. Or some ex-girlfriend or something coming in and saying, oh, he's an a-hole. I think you ought to take his guns away. The law is written loosely enough to where that can almost literally be the case. When it comes right down to it, I think I am the embodiment of what the Second Amendment is all about. I believe in the right to carry to protect myself, to protect my community, and to protect my nation if need be. My 13 years in the Navy taught me, I went around the world a few times, and it taught me that there is no greater country than the US. And our Constitution says it very blatantly, very poetically, that what we have is beautiful and shall not be infringed. And that's really all I want to say today, is that we have the Constitution, that is the supreme law. Legislators in Lansing are trying to usurp that law. And I think it's a great idea for our county to at least put out the notice that we respect the Constitution above laws that go against the Constitution. And that's it. Thank you.
My name's Ed Nordquist, and I am here with your resolution about the sanctuary county. I want to state I am a firm believer of the Second Amendment. I'm a Michigan CPL holder and a retiree of the Michigan Department of Corrections with 28 years. I was also a member of the NRA for very many years, as well as a member of the Leshino Sportsman's Club. It's my opinion that the NRA and the far-right conspiracy groups have been pushing these conspiracy theories to the undereducated or uninformed in order to rake in millions of dollars for their leadership. The more people are scared, the faster the money pours in. I see nothing in the current legislation that limits my Second Amendment rights. Courts have always maintained that convicted felons lose their right to own a firearm. Enhanced background checks are the way of enforcing laws that are already on the books, instead of making new gun laws. That's been the NRA's talking point for very many years. Red flag laws are simply taking dangerous weapon out of the hands that someone's going through a serious mental breakdown. During every firearm check, the purchaser is asked if they have a mental issue in the past. No one with a mental history is going to say, yes, I'm a nut. They lie. And they get their purchase. Red flag laws let law enforcement know that the individual needs help. And again, that's just enforcing laws that are currently on the books. Guns need to be stored in a safe manner when children are in the house. Responsible gun owners educate their children, grandchildren, not to play or touch with guns without adult supervision. We saw it in the news right here in Michigan. Parents bought a gun for a kid, didn't lock it up, and a tragedy ensued. Keeping them unlocked and unloaded when children are in their own home only makes sense. Nothing in this law stops you from carrying or using it when you want or need it. The NRA and these conspiracy theorists have convinced us that they're just trying to take all our rights, but there's nothing there that's taken a right from the Second Amendment. Less than 3 months ago, our commissioners took an oath of office to protect not only the Constitution of the United States, but the Constitution of the state of Michigan. Part of the Constitution of the state of Michigan is saying that you're going to obey the laws of the state of Michigan. Whatever law is made, you have a duty to uphold it, whether you like it or not. This resolution needs to be withdrawn now. If this isn't rescinded, I want to remind any commissioner that votes for it that you are not above the law, and there's another election around the corner.
Good morning, Scott Sutherland, Garrish Township and Precinct Delegate. I'm here to talk to you about the importance of the Second Amendment resolution that you have in front of you today. There's been a lot said already that I primarily concur with on the support side. Okay, is that better? Okay, sorry. The Declaration of Independence was 15 years roughly before the Bill of Rights was passed in 1791, so 76 to 91. Without the Second Amendment, there's no enforcement of our Declaration of Independence, which says that if a tyrannical government rises up against the people, these Bill of Rights are in place to allow you to replace that tyranny with a new government by and for the people. Well, that's all great, but without the Second Amendment, that becomes impossible. Why? Second Amendment is primarily a defensive weapon. The idea isn't that 300 million people with guns are going to storm the Capitol. The idea is if a large percentage of our population has guns, that tyrannical government will not storm us and enslave us, which is exactly what's going on in Lansing right now. It's an illegitimate, unelected, bureaucratic regime in Lansing that, see what they're doing? They're going after our guns. And people that sit up here and tell you that no matter what Lansing does, you should just lie down and follow the laws that they pass is, to me, it's unconscionable. So I urge your full support on this resolution. As our sheriff has stated, it is largely symbolic. It does not impact the sheriff's office or the prosecuting attorney's office or the judges that oversee this jurisdiction. Again, it's largely symbolic. I want to thank, in the meantime, as I conclude, I want to thank Tom Van Wormer and Sheriff Stern for their responses, and also Dan Bonamy from Grayling, or from Crawford County, who was instrumental in getting this put in front of you. So thank you very much. I urge your full support on this.
Chase Shepke, Houghton Lake resident. I live on the west side of Houghton Lake. I feel that there were some misguidings in what Stacy told people. I have a baby and a toddler at home, so I'm not as sharp as I usually am, but the way she explained it is that a feasibility study must be done. The way I understood it, must be done to do any work on the Houghton Lake structure. I believe that to be incorrect. I could be wrong. On top of that, these feasibility studies, from my background, I know are very expensive. And I would personally like to know what that will cost the taxpayers on Houghton Lake. A second thing I have, I guess, a problem with what she said. She said that Higgins Lake was the only dam that needed temporary solution before a permanent solution. I believe that to be incorrect too. I believe that Lake St. Helen Dam actually needs to be focused on with a temporary solution before any other lake, seeing how that dam is currently operating. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Troy Daniel. I've been a resident of this county since 1997. I appreciate the opportunity as a resident and citizen of this county to make a statement. I urge the Board of Commissioners to not adopt resolution number 2023-03-01 for the following reasons. I do not want county commissioners speaking on my behalf regarding gun legislation. If a commissioner wants to inform the state or federal government about their views on gun control legislation, they should do it on their own time as individuals and not as county representatives. Said resolution does not reflect my views on the matter. The resolution states that the county should not abide by the laws enacted by the state or federal legislators that are deemed unconstitutional. My concern is that the resolution encourages county officials and law enforcement to preempt any decision by the courts regarding the constitutionality of proposed gun control legislation. Obviously, any law deemed unconstitutional should not be enforced, but until such a time occurs, the proposed legislation or proposed resolution is merely superfluous. County commissioners have enough local issues to focus on. Passing symbolic resolutions that address proposed legislation is a waste of taxpayers' time. Finally, such a resolution sends a bad message to the people that may consider moving to our area. That message being that the county will decide based on political will of the majority what laws should be followed and what laws should be ignored. Therefore, I urge the Roscommon Board of Commissioners to not waste any further time on this matter and vote down the adoption of the resolution number 2023-03-01. Thank you very much for your time.
I'm sorry.
Hello, I'm Ann Meeks. I have two public comments, two different issues. One is sort of a question about the lake level resolutions I saw on the website, your website. I don't know if those are going to be addressed today or not for the 3 different lakes. Okay. Maybe I'll hold off on that then. In terms of the resolution before you for the Second Amendment, Second Amendment rights are guaranteed in our Constitution presently. And the resolution before you says that this board will not support the enforcement of any law that is ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. My understanding, and I think the general public, and I hope your understanding, is that government entities would not and could not enforce laws that the Supreme Court rules are unconstitutional. So briefly, I think this resolution is unnecessary. And I urge you to vote against it.
Dan Bonham, Crawford County, and I talked with you for 15 minutes last week, and I appreciate your time, I appreciate your service. I've heard a number of people talk about laws not being constitutional and ones that are constitutional in their mind. And just to spell out one of the laws, you're not allowed to, they're making all government properties gun-free zones, anything leased or owned by the government. As a citizen traveling across the state, I pay for a rest area. If I'm going on a hunting trip, that means I can't use my own public rest area. These laws, I can't go to your grocery store because it has a liquor license. And one of the laws shows that if it has any alcohol sales or a license to the state, that is a gun-free zone. So to the people that think that these rules are constitutional, please read more. I'd like to know how many people are here supporting the resolution. Please raise your hands. You have quite a few. We had our whole room in Crawford County filled last week and down the hallway because we took and put it public that this was going to happen. Your community has not done that. If you take and push this resolution away, I guarantee you next week it will flood down that hallways because people want to have the Constitution upheld for them. So I'll read from one little thing here before I let you go. The National Center for Constitutional Studies. A premise of Americans' responsibility under the Constitution of 1787. The framers' first assumption was that all just authority of government comes from the people under God, not from the monarch or a government class, but from an innumerable citizens who make up the public. The people delegate to the government only such powers as they think is prudent for the government to exercise. Government is the people's creation, not their master. Thus, if the citizens are sovereign, it is the citizens' responsibility to take upon their shoulders the tasks of seeing that order, justice, and freedom are maintained. The framers' second assumption was the American citizens would undertake the responsibility for an ordinary function of the civil social order, and that local communities would manage their own affairs. Under their system, the roles of various levels of government would be a minimal and would not unnecessarily intrude to the day-to-day lives of citizens. These laws they're putting intrude in our lives. They intrude to our lifestyles. As a concealed carry holder, I cannot go to the grocery store. I cannot drive across the state of Michigan and stop and get food, gasoline, without having breaking the law based on these new laws. They are infringing on us. So this is symbolic. And there are up to 53 other counties now in Michigan of the 83 that have signed a similar resolution. I ask you to do the same and join that so we show Lansing that Roscommon County stands with the rest of us in pushing these down. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Tim O'Rourke. I'm here to discuss this proposed resolution for the Second Amendment. I'm wondering first, what does this board think it's going to achieve if it passes this resolution? What's the purpose of the resolution? Is it just a political stunt to thumb your nose at the legislators in Lansing? I think that you should consider that when you decide yes or no on this resolution, because the legislators in Lansing can tie up your purse strings if that's your problem. If you create this problem with them, they can certainly stop your money from coming in. And I wonder how this county is going to operate without state money coming in, and the other 53 counties that are saying we're not going to follow the laws of the state of Michigan as enacted. I think it's just a stunt. I don't like stunts. I don't like this kind of politics. But I want to ask a couple of serious questions before you take up this matter. How many of you have read the actual Supreme Court decisions that are listed in this body of work? Have you read the Heller decision? It's what it says. It says you can't have a machine gun to defend your home. It specifically says you can't have a short-off shotgun. You can defend your home with a pistol or a rifle. It says that. But unless you've read the document, you look at this and it says something completely different in your resolution. And there are 4 other quotes in here as to this is what the case was, the United States Supreme Court took up, and this is what it said. And it's not accurate. And unless you've read each one of those, how do you propose to vote on this? Unless you've had time to read it and you've had time to decide whether you agree with it or disagree with the actual language that was brought forth in that Supreme Court decision. I think that it's your job to look at this resolution and not to vote it up or down, but to delay it until you have time to actually look at it, read it, find out what it actually says, correct those misunderstandings, and then decide if you want to be part of the group that thumbs its nose at the legislature of this state, or if you want to be part of the group that says, we disagree with what you're proposing, and we would ask you to change those laws before you enact them. That's my position. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes. Please come up here and state your name.
My name is Norm Fulmer. I'm a resident of Markey Township, Houghton Lake, and I would like to just simply state that there are 2 words in the Second Amendment that does not get enough emphasis. And those 2 words are well regulated. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Yep. We'll go to the first. Yes, sir. Please state your name.
Yeah, were you talking to me, Mr. Russo? My name is Greg Seamack. I'm a resident of Garish Township. And mine was the letter that Commissioner Ostergren read in the earlier work session. It was sent to all the commissioners on Monday. After hearing Ms. Hissong's comments earlier, I'm very concerned about her continued involvement. And I guess I'll start with this question. When she was first hired, was the board's intent to have her pursue a change in lake level, or has that become her suggestion? It occurs to me that she intends to publish a survey starting on Monday to local property owners, and that ends on May 5th. And it's been my experience that many lakefront owners are not engaged in lake affairs until later in the spring. And I'm assuming that that also applies to other property owners in the area who is not their primary residence. And in any case, if what you're looking for is accurate information, you're not going to be getting it from a survey that's done between tomorrow and May 5th. More people will be here at a later time, so I would suggest that that might be delayed. Also, Ms. Hissong seems intent on getting everything started for the special assessment district as quickly as possible, and I may add with her involvement. It's been my experience that whenever someone suggests that such haste is required, that it's a red flag that requires taking the time to analyze more fully. I'd like to suggest that someone from the board look into alternative representation to continue with its proposed special assessment districts, and that any such involvement or movement forward be delayed by this board until an evaluation of council is done. I suggest that this is a means of determining not if Ms. Hissong's involvement is the easiest path to follow, but in order to determine if her continued involvement is the best use of the county's funds. So thanks for listening to me, and I hope that we give this more consideration and that we don't rush forward as quickly as she suggests.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else out there? Andy?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Leroy Johnston. I've been a resident of Roscommon County for 55 years. I'm a Second Amendment supporter. I'm a CPL holder. And I come to voice my opposition to this bill, this resolution supporting the Second Amendment. Let me throw some numbers at you guys first. The Detroit News conducted a poll on the 7th of March. Detroit News is considered the more conservative of the two major metropolitan dailies in Michigan. This is what their poll found, that in the case of universal background checks, 87.8% of the voters support them. In the case of safe storage laws, 79.8% of the voters support them. In the case of red flag laws, 74.5% of all the voters support them. And I'd like to add that had we had a red flag law in place, the horrific triple murder that occurred 500 feet from my house last summer might not have happened. But that's the Detroit News. That's a long way away, right? How about the Houghton Lake Resorter? They had a poll that ran from March 8th through March 15th, and it has been proposed that Roscommon County become a Second Amendment sanctuary county. Would you be in support of such a proposal being adopted by the Roscommon County Board of Commissioners? The vote on that one was no, 68%. Over 2-1. Here's a sad number. As of 2020, the number one cause of death for children ages 1 to 19 in this country is not fentanyl, it's firearms. And finally, some numbers that should matter to all the commission because it's a very important part of our job. We've heard that 53 counties are now Second Amendment sanctuary counties in Michigan. That leaves 30 counties that aren't. If you looked at a map of the state of Michigan, where that lies, you would see that most of those 30 counties are in the southern 1/3 of the state where 90% of the population lives. Roscommon County has one industry, it's tourism. People have to come here to play. That generates our entire cash flow. If Roscommon County sends the message to them that it doesn't care about the safety of their children, they may decide to spend their dollars someplace else. About the resolution itself, let's go into that for a little bit. Echo Mr. O'Rourke and what he said earlier. If you look down the resolutions, number 7, whereas, quotes, District of Columbia versus Heller. Number 8, whereas, quotes, McDonald versus Chicago, and that's supposedly, I assume, in support of the number 9 whereas, which states the citizens of Michigan have not granted power to the state to determine what type of arms we may keep and bear, nor has the Supreme Court of the United States ever ruled that there is some restriction in our Constitution. Well, let's take a look at this. The majority opinion in the DC versus Heller case was written by Justice Antonin Scalia, a very well-known conservative justice. He said a lot of things in that decision. You might not have heard these words, but he said these too. Like most rights, the right secured by the Second Amendment is not unlimited. From Blackstone through the 19th century cases, commentators and courts routinely explained that the right was not a right to keep and carry any weapon whatsoever in any manner whatsoever and for whatever purpose. Although we do not undertake an exhaustive historical analysis today of the full scope of the Second Amendment, nothing in our opinion should be taken to cast doubt on long-standing prohibitions on the possession of firearms by felons and the mentally ill, or laws forbidding the carrying of firearms in sensitive places such as schools or government buildings, or laws imposing conditions and qualifications on the commercial sale of arms. And then in McDonald versus Chicago, the justice that wrote that majority opinion, was Samuel Alito, another very conservative justice. What did he say? He said, it is important to keep in mind that Heller, while striking down a law that prohibited possession of handguns in the home, recognized that the right to keep and bear arms is not a right to keep and carry any weapon whatsoever, in any manner whatsoever, and for whatsoever purpose. We made it clear in Heller that our holding did not cast doubt on such longstanding regulatory measures as prohibitions on the possession of firearms by felons and the mentally ill, laws forbidding the carrying of firearms in sensitive places, or laws imposing.
Leroy, your 5 minutes is up, sir. Anybody else out there? Yes, sir.
I'll make what I have to say short but sweet. My name is Dennis Lee. I've lived in Roscommon County on and off since 1968. And I am here to speak in favor of your resolution. I see what the state is doing. I've heard people talking about the different laws and how can you go against the state. Well, if the state laws are violating the US Constitution, which I believe they are, because of the way they're written, then we really need to look at the US Constitution versus the state laws. I don't think anything in the resolution violates the laws, because you're just making a resolution saying that you're going to follow the Second Amendment of the US Constitution. That seems very clear to me. You're not saying you're going to violate a state law. You're not saying you're going to violate a federal law. You're just saying you're going to follow the US Constitution. Therefore, I fully support this resolution.
Anybody else for public comment? Number 7, Administrator Controller Report.
Yes.
Are you afraid of Jody? You came on your own now.
I start talking, Commissioner Wolfson. Okay. Well, happy Wednesday, everyone. Quick lawsuit update. The Courage versus Roscommon County Treasurer, there's currently no change. Chill versus Roscommon County, the Supreme Court has decided that it will not review now the Chill versus Roscommon County Court of Appeals decision. What this means, just to make sure that my board understands, I know Mr. Ostergen does, Commissioner Ostergen, that the plaintiff has won their right to continue their case in front of circuit court. So that process will move forward. In regards to the Ostergen et al. Versus Melvin, there's no change. That will all hinge on the Chill versus Roscommon County. Opioid suit, I won't even go into too much of it because that gentleman did a lovely idea catching you up. So you do know we did receive that first round of funding, $257,000 $6,278.63 to be exact. Those needs that had been identified prior to was a project with community mental health, a project with our district health department, and most specifically here locally, working within the Roscommon County Jail to offset those treatments that we provide at a cost of could be upwards to $3,000 a shot a day. So that will probably be one of the biggest bang for our bucks. Additionally, bringing in counselors and support for those inmates. Special assessment process, you get a pretty good update on what's going on. Just to let you know, as you're all aware, there were some bank failures recently. That being said, there is a 30-day hold on our bonding bids because obviously who wants to go out and put into bonds at this process? So that'll resume again in 30 days with processing out. A quick clarification for everybody, because there seems to be with maybe Stacy skipping in and out and a little bit of history. The process for creating a special assessment district, the creation of the special assessment district doesn't mean that people are being billed for something. It simply means that the means to repair, correct, and fix exist. This actually all started back when the Houghton Lake level control structure had a pretty big issue with the plates. One of the boards that were come in, we had to put a steel plate in, and at that point in time, everyone quickly realized that the general fund is so caught up with courts and jails and new election laws and just general required mandated spending that there's not an additional $1.5 million to fix anything. There's not an additional $20,000 to fix anything. So that is the process that we have started with that. Having worked with Mrs. Sassong and the Fahey Schultz group through our drain district projects, there was a favorable relationship already established and a large push to utilize somebody that was already very familiar with that. It is in the scope of the purchasing policy that when it comes to specialized professionals, that you may go for the best. And you may also take into consideration previous knowledge. So I'll leave that kind of out there. In regards to funding, phase 1, lake level, Houghton Lake, which is the data collection and public opinion survey that they are referencing, $240,000 is the estimate. Phase 1, St. Helen, for their approval, all the way through approval of the creation of the special assessment district in circuit court, $54,000. Phase 1 for approval of creation of the district through circuit court and implementation of preliminary improvements for Higgins Lake is $64,000. So just to put those numbers out there for you. Current lake levels. Higgins Lake is currently 4.5 inches above the winter level. As I had stated before, I will give these to you on a bi-weekly basis so that by the direction of the board, if there is something that you would like to see done differently by your delegated authority, you have the opportunity. Houghton Lake is at 5.6 inches over winter level. St. Helen is 4.3 inches over winter level. All right, quick legislative update. House Bill 4016 distributes money through no fewer than 7 actual state departments. The largest share is $800 million, and that's either going to incentives for the Ford plant in Calhoun County or an additional investment in the state's SOAR Economic Development Fund, which is pertinent to urban, not rural areas. Just a couple things you could be talking to our Senate and legislators about. The bill provides an additional $212 million for homeowners and landlords to do energy efficiency, $25 million for grants to offset water bills for low-income residents, and $10 million to reduce nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment in Lake Erie. We're not getting any of that money. That's, I guess, my point to you. Senator John reintroduced his idea for reimbursement for disabled veterans property tax exemptions. This is in Senate Bill 95 and 96. Basically, what this bill does is fully reimburses counties for property tax losses due to the state mandated exemptions for disabled veterans. So how it works right now is it cuts off the veterans receive a great benefit. But the state decided where it was going to be taken from, and that's the tax money that comes in. So this is one of those state unfunded mandates to fix. Additionally, there is a Senate panel that Michigan Association of Counties has presented to. As you guys are all probably aware, obviously our county revenue sharing, which is actually much different and less percentage than townships, cities, and villages, was basically a handshake agreement with the state in lieu of being able to tax our own services within the county. So that is being presented to them. That has actually not been fully funded since the late 90s, to the tune of, for all counties, about $318 billion. Daily work. I will be getting the listening session report to you as soon as it comes from Sarah. I did attend a free MSUE Department of Treasury training for long-term fiscal sustainability. It's pretty interesting, and the Treasury gets a list of everybody that attends, and you get a few good ideas for your budgets. We finalized the updated enabling agreement with all the participants in the Northern Lakes Community Mental Health District. We are meeting again the first week of April to review one final time. I am going to email that out to you to give you a week to kind of look through and look for questions prior to that meeting, so that if I need to represent concerns, I'm more than happy to do that. I am compiling the American Rescue Plan Act quarterly grant reports I've had for the last year to submit it into the federal American Rescue Plan Act portal. They like to do things a little bit differently, but all the data will be there and will be in compliance by the end of April. That's when it's due. Bids for replacing the employee parking lot have been received, and the lowest bid is from Hodgkins Asphalt, which is the closest, most local bidder. That was $58,000, and they are out of West Branch. We do have 2 new workers' compensation claims that have come out of our animal shelter. There is no missed time associated with those, but I just wanted to make you aware. Speaking of workers' compensation, Sheriff Stern and his office were awarded a $5,000 grant through our workers' compensation carrier, Comp One, and that is for improved uniform equipment that will reduce injuries, back strain, etc. So big shout out to Sheriff for doing that. I appreciate you. Additionally, Under Sheriff Lowe received a $1,050 from the MMRMA liability RAP grant program for equipment. So I appreciate when they do those things. Our federal grant registry number, which is our SAM number, has been renewed, which means we can continue to be eligible to receive federal and grant funds. The accrual process is continuing. Obviously, that's where I take the payroll and accounts payable paid in this current fiscal calendar year and accrue those back accounting wise to 2022. That'll give us some final numbers. Our audit starts May 1st. We have finalized the 2023 Spongy Moth Spray Block request and payments of residents. That was completed per our schedule last Friday, so those blocks will come out. Now, I do have one last thing that I would like to do. Laura, hi. So for those of you that don't know, Laura McKillop has been our housing director about 10, 11 years now. Been with the county, don't cry yet. Been with the county about 30 years and 1 month and 1 week or something of that nature. One of the programs when the restoration millage fell that was a need but not a mandate is our housing department. We have found a way to provide still some if the board so chooses to work in with Crawford County on that. But I wanted to just give you a little history on Laura really quick because I go on vacation tomorrow, so I won't see you on your last day. This is about me. There. Can you hear me? Okay. So Laura McKillop began her career with Roscommon County on January 29th, 1993. She started working part-time for our animal shelter. I should add that's where she met her husband too. In 1994, due to her work ethic and friendliness, she was offered an additional part-time job in the Roscommon County Treasurer's Office. Laura was next officially made full-time in the Treasurer's Office, serving as a roving, is what it says in your hire letter, clerk, assisting all throughout the county building as needed. In June 1998, Laura accepted the position of housing assistant, providing secretarial, clerical, and accounting duties for the Roscommon County Housing Authority. From her beginnings in the housing department, she embraced the challenge of assisting our residents in need, working closely with them and the housing director, Pat Marshall. They serve the residents of the county with various state and federal household-related programs. Upon Ms. Marshall's retirement in 2013, Laura was deservedly promoted to the position of housing director, bringing her professionalism, compassion, and knowledge to this role. Throughout her career, Laura has served her peeps, that's what she calls them, with kindness and respect. She consistently receives accolades and praise from those she assists and has won the support and admiration of not only her customers, but her housing authority board that has members that have served with her probably well from her beginning in the department, her peers, and her supervisors. She has created lasting relationships with homeowners, volunteer groups, and the contractors of our area. Her preparedness, her organization has allowed Roscommon County residents to be the recipient of over 20 years worth of projects through the First Presbyterian Church of Lake Forest Youth Group. They come here to assist because of Laura. While the closing of the housing department, as it has existed for over 25 years, has brought much heartache and strain to both the county and to Laura personally, she has continued to show the same devotion and passion to the program as she did at the beginning of her career. Despite the unexpected and unplanned loss of the profession she loves, Laura has continued to work to support a successful closing and transition of her department. Few of us have true knowledge of what it takes to oversee and coordinate the programs and services that Laura has provided to our residents. We have been blessed to have someone so caring, respectful, and educated serving the residents of our county. Laura is the heart of our housing department, and I will miss you. Now,
Laura, along with some people. Thank you for your service.
oh, thank you. Sorry. This is the last meeting we have to do it. Okay. Yes, that was Julie's idea. And with that, I'm done.
Yes, quick question, and then I propose we all take a really quick break. We've been in here for.
Sure.
Or a question or a comment on the decision from the Supreme Court. It's going to be moved forward in the circuit court under some very specific instructions that this county is to abide by the lake level order. So it's not just it's going to be turned back over to the courts. There's some very specific instructions. It was a landmark case. It was a published case in the Court of Appeals. I just wanted to add that.
Let's take a 10-minute break. 11:40.
I've been drinking water, coffee and water all morning.
I'm opening this meeting back up for correspondence.
Yep.
Everyone has copies of it. Monthly department reports. Roscommon County Sheriff's Department. Visitors, do we have any visitors? Okay, it's thinning out. Number 11, unfinished business, new business. A, Regional Juvenile Detention Center. Jody.
Okay, let me find my paperwork. I know there were some questions on this at the last meeting, and again, I apologize. My daughter broke her wrist the Friday before, and either get her in during the regular meeting or wait another week. That wasn't something we wanted to do, so I apologize for missing. So the Regional Juvenile Detention Center feasibility study. Little background, I know 3 of our commissioners were able to attend the listening session, and I think that you heard quite a bit from people in regards to concerns with no place to place juveniles, no assistance, no mental health, no support in those areas. The state used to have a ton of facilities. We used to have a short-term placement facility. That went under because of all the state regulations that have been placed in. If they're over basically if they were over 14 days, we had to have them see somebody on a regular basis and lots of different things. I grabbed some numbers from Jake Collini, who is our referee for our juvenile court. And he is also in charge of all of our juvenile probation officers. The first thing that he told me was that so far this year, since January 1, 3 more juvenile placement facilities have shut down. We are currently down to the following. Now, this is for the entire state of Michigan. So we are sharing with Wayne, Oakland, Genesee. 2 secure facilities for girls in the state. 1 secure facility for boys in the state. 1 non-secure for boys, and 0 non-secure facilities for girls in the state. Additionally, in regards to Roscommon County, specifically in numbers, we used to average about 30 individuals in placement per year in 2020. That was based on about 85 petitions or so roughly 35%. Since COVID, we are up to roughly 128 petitions for youth placement a year. Of those 128 petitions, 13% have been able to be placed because of the lack of placements available. That is roughly a 50% reduction in placement. So these youths are going back into society. They are going back into homes with safety plans in place. It's not a good thing. The state of Michigan, these conversations, the conversation that was had in the listening session in regards to mental health in general and juvenile mental health, those conversations aren't happening at the state of Michigan. As a matter of fact, they're doing things like, here, you can have an $8,000 grant, but we're going to tell you exactly who, what, where, when, and how to spend it on your youth. That doesn't really work. Every county is different. This feasibility study is very specific to 5 counties. It would be Alpena, Crawford, Ogama, and Gladwin. It started as a conversation amongst juvenile referees, judges, and county administrator controllers in regards to, the cost of that juvenile facility, those placements, those things keep going up and up. Where do we put people? How do we handle these? Are we getting any bang for our buck? Are our youth receiving what they need in order to become productive members of society? And the answer, of course, is no. It's not happening, and unfortunately, it's not due to lack of trying or want. So the detailed scope of the work that would be performed from Brand Row Enterprises is a needs assessment to determine exactly what numbers are you looking at and what services do we actually have to provide in this facility through the state requirements and through the wants of these 5 counties for their youth. This would then lead you to, hey, what size facility do you need for these things? What rooms do you need available? The second plans would be site plans, elevations, floor plans for proposed facility, thoughts, ideas for a regional mid-northern Michigan location, estimated construction costs, annual operating budgets, and general financial planning. Could it support itself? Because obviously that's what happened next door. It couldn't support itself. And unfortunately, the general funds don't have the money in any counties to offset those rising costs. Additionally, that would include then a presentation to all of the boards that would be involved in that. This is not a sign-on. This is not saying that you would want to move forward with the facility. This is simply $5,000 to gather information with 4 other counties to see if this is something that we can do. I will tell you, Traverse City is working, Grand Traverse is working on their own facility. They are looking primarily at trying to get money from the state in order to build a facility up there. We're really small, the 5 counties I just named. We don't garner a lot of support through the state of Michigan. So it comes down to, if you want something done, are we going to be able to do it ourselves? So the $5,000 cost for us, it's a total of $25,000 project. And the other 4 counties have signed on already. Would provide that whole detailed scope of work that I provided to you and allow for a public presentation to you, the Board of Commissioners. At that point, all 5 county boards would need to make a determination about who, what, where, when, how. So this is the information gathering, so you could make an informed decision. Commissioner Wolfson had asked me where we get the money from, because the budget's tight. We do have a contingency fund of $50,000, and we would be able to take $5,000 out of that contingency to put into this survey. We are currently at about 16.6% of our budget year, with our spending at 16.62%. Beginning of the year, spending tends to trim a little bit higher because everything nobody bought in December, as the year's closing out, gets bought in January and February. So our numbers are supportive of being able to take that $5,000 out of your contingency fund. Questions?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the fact that they give us a public presentation. It's imperative. And I would suggest that when they do present, that we just have that at a work session or a special meeting where we just focus on that one topic.
Right.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other discussion? B, communications with Ego Higgins Lake LLC. I was directed by this board.
I'd like to.
Okay.
And I want to say it shortly before I sworn that I'd look forward to working with all the members of this board and Controller Jody Valentino. And the reason I felt that way is we all talked about trust, working together, we can accomplish great things for Roscommon. Everyone knew why I was elected and what I wanted to accomplish with regards to Higgins Lake, but it seemed to quickly change, as I soon discovered. I still hope we can get around to working things out, but it looks like we need to get some issues worked out first. First of all, at the last meeting, I asked the chair to investigate who removed the rocks from the Higgins Lake level control structure. And I didn't receive any response. And I'd like to ask the chair again if he knows anything about the rocks being removed from the LLCS. And I'd also like to ask the same of Commissioner Milburn and Jody Valentino.
No, I don't have a clue. And when you get done talking, I'll speak.
Okay, well, I'm going to continue on. And I see Commissioner Melvin in the back room, and I know he can't communicate with us, but just by simply nodding his head one way or the other, if he knows anything about the rocks being removed. And if that's illegal to do, I won't go any further. Okay, Commissioner Milburn and Jody Valentino, do you have anything about the rocks being removed?
I don't even know what you're talking about.
That's some information. And I did a little investigation. And I have an awful lot of
What are you talking about, Commissioner
There
Ostergen?
it is right there about the rocks being removed from the Higgins Lake level control structure. I'm going to read some things into the record and we're going to go from there. This is from the.
Oh, let me
Houghton Lake-
interrupt you. I
Houghton
can
Lake
stop
is-
you super quickly.
Oh,
So
no, you're not, I am
you asked me a
now
question.
making, no,
You didn't want an answer?
You are interrupting me. I am in.
You didn't want an answer?
No, I do not want an answer. Now, you had your opportunity to make an answer. Now it's easy to see what wants to change your answer. Okay. Here's a article from the Houghton Lake Resorter. After Todd Kalish of the Michigan Department of Natural Resources Fisheries Division recommended a November 5th special meeting back in 2014 at the Higgins Lake level control structure that rocks should be removed from the 5-foot opening in the dam. The Roscommon County Board of Commissioners took his advice. During a November 19th meeting, the board passed a motion requesting that the Director of Maintenance and Operations, Steve Nielsen, remove the rocks from the control structure. The rocks are to be removed as soon as possible with oversight from the Department of Natural Resources. In other Higgins Lake news, Commissioner Ken Melvin, District 2, said there had been some questions addressed to him regarding boards at the control structure that are in the legal lake level. He said the boards have never been open and that he and Chairman Bob Schneider would be meeting at the control structure to look at the boards. After addressing the boards, Melvin said that under legal advisement, he was told that it is illegal for him to be the sole decision maker regarding the lake level on Higgins Lake. He said that the maintenance should be the full responsibility and guidelines need to be made to maintain that legal level. One of the few things that I agree with Commissioner Melvin on. At this particular point, I don't agree with you, Schneider told Melvin. Schneider said that the board does not have to make guidelines for the maintenance of the lake level and that he should be following the court order for the legal lake level. It already states what you need to do, Schneider said of the court order. He asked that as a commissioner, Melvin took on the role of maintaining the Higgins Lake level when he agreed to the committee assignments last January. He noted that Melvin is therefore responsible for the lake. Is there an alternative that you can bring forward by January 2nd, Schneider asked Melvin. Melvin suggested that a county employee be hired to manage the lake and guidelines be made for the maintenance. Vice Chair Mark Milburn suggested that the board consider a lake level committee to help Melvin with the maintenance of the lake. He also suggested the possibility of hiring an independent person to maintain the lake levels at Higgins Lake, Houghton Lake, and Lake St. Helen. No decisions were made on the matter. However, committee assignments will be reviewed at the January organizational meeting. These are from the minutes of the November 5th meeting, 2014, here at the Commissioners. New business, I highlighted. Site visit to Higgins Lake level control structure. All the commissioners went out there, okay? There was a group discussion of the rock placement, sheet piling, and resting rubber plate at the entrance of the dam and of the levels of the rock versus water levels and past rock placement. DNR Fisheries Division Todd Kalish was asked by Chairman Schneider if large rocks in front of the dam need to be removed. Mr. Kalish recommends removing part of the rocks as a preventative proactive measure for fish passage. He also said it needs to take place sooner or later. In the meeting on 11/19/14, highlighted sections. Motion by Russo, supported by Melvin, to request Steve Nielsen, Director of Maintenance of Operations, to schedule removal of the rocks from the 5-foot opening on Higgins Lake Dam. Removal of rocks is to be completed as soon as possible with the oversight of the Department of Natural Resources. On roll call, ayes, Russo, Milburn, Schneider, Souter, Melvin, none, nays, none, motion carried. Anyway, it looks like we got a situation here, okay, that needs to be addressed by the current commission. From the article I just passed out from the Houghton Lake Resorter and the commissioners meeting, it looks like the DNR, for whatever reason, decided to go back behind the back of Eagle and conspired and then requested that past commissioners violate the Higgins Lake level control structure permit and modify it by removing rocks from the opening of the LLCS when the levels on Higgins were already below the legal level at that time. An illegal act without getting a permit modification from Eagle. Just because these acts were done in full public view and recorded as such doesn't mean they weren't illegal. Eagle was not aware that the DNR was requesting the commissioners to tamper with the LLCS, as we received nothing back in a 2015 Freedom of Information Act request about it. Removing the rocks was a clear violation of the permit. We have photographs from 2007 when the new dam was installed that it clearly shows an apron across the bottom of the opening with large rocks in front of the opening and absolutely no evidence that anything had been changed until 2014 when the commissioners removed the rocks. Nothing in writing, no emails, letters, or anything suggesting the opening was supposed to be changed. To be perfectly clear, Eagle is in charge of the permit and modifications to it after it is installed, not the DNR. While Eagle may ask for the DNR's input during the permitting process, the DNR is not allowed to modify it, and it looks like they got the commissioners to do its dirty work for them. The DNR clearly violated its authority in asking the commission to remove the rocks from the opening of the LLCS because they don't want the LLCS there in the first place. What is worse is that the previous commission was foolish enough to do what they requested. Again, here's what was reported in the November 5 minutes. I'm going to say that in a second. And we heard from Stacy Hassong this morning that the DNR has absolutely nothing to do with Eagle, two separate entities. And here's the quote. Mr. Kalish recommends removing part of the rocks as a preventative proactive measure for fish passage. He also said it does need to take place sooner or later. Where did Mr. Kalish get the authority to instruct the commission to do that? And what gave the commission the authority to do what the DNR asked? That being said, the commission never got permission from Eagle to take the rocks out. The commission should have the authority to put them back in. Why didn't the commissioners ask for direction when the DNR requested them to take the rocks out? Didn't they know the DNR doesn't have such authority? Is there anything in writing, or was it all just verbal so they could deny everything if they needed to? No, there's nothing in writing, and if there is, I'd like to see it. Mr. Kalish talks about fish passage. Very interesting. How many fish go through the passage? I would venture to say that fish don't go through that passage at all. The water moves way too fast. It would take an Atlantic salmon to jump through that water. It moves so fast. And even if they wanted to enter Higgins, water may be needed downstream, but needing rocks removed in the passage so more fish can travel between the cut and Higgins is a questionable claim. This question will be asked when we get into the discovery and legal process if it gets that far. We need to remember that the DNR doesn't want an LLCS on Higgins at all. And I believe this request was made as a backroom deal between Ken Melvin and his low water supporters and the DNR to open up the spillway so the low water supporters could lower the water levels on Higgins without going through the proper legal process. The same thing happened last year when Melvin got together with the DNR fisheries to illegally keep the gates open on Higgins until May 24, 2022, which drove the levels down last summer. Melvin claimed that this was to support the walleye fry on Houghton, and that the DNR asked him to send more water downstream.
Sorry, I feel very uncomfortable. These charges are egregious in nature, and I feel very uncomfortable about the presentation.
I object to the interruption. I object to the interruption.
One at a time.
That's me.
Just my thoughts.
He just asked for a moment.
But I think these are egregious comments, and I feel that they're not representational. Just my thoughts, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. I'll continue on. Melvin claimed that this was to support the walleye fry on Houghton Lake and that the DNR asked him to send water downstream. Another questionable claim, and I will certainly explore that when the discovery proceedings occur. Now, there's nowhere in the court order that says water needs to be sent downstream to support walleye fry in the early spring. Here's what the court order says regarding the restoration of the summer water level during the refilling process. It is further ordered and adjudged that in adjusting the lake levels as herein provided, the person or persons responsible for such operations shall make every reasonable effort to take into consideration stream flows into the lake and projected snow melt runoff within the watershed, as well as providing a minimum release during refill operations. Last year, we had very little snow. No way that gate should have been open. Melvin has yet to answer for these actions.
Okay, that's enough.
No, you can't do that, Mr. Chairman. I have the floor.
Actually, he can do that.
Yes, and I've heard enough.
I understand why you want to be ruled down. You don't want to hear all of it.
Let's go to C. Headley Restoration Millage 2020. That Rex.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most important things for our county right now.
Very much so.
And I'd like to see this board working on something.
I would be more than happy to sit on a committee with you to get things started off, Rex.
Okay. Because we need to address that.
You can always, Mr. Chair, with your permission, you can always count on my support.
Okay.
We've worked on that before, and it's
Sure.
just a difficult time at this juncture.
Yeah, I'd be more than happy after the meeting. We can set some dates up.
Okay.
Sit down together. Number 12, motions and resolutions. Michelle.
Move to enter into a 5-county regional juvenile detention center feasibility study with Alpena, Crawford, Gladwin, and Ogama counties for the purpose of defining county needs, financial objectives, facility planning and budgeting. Contract with Ranro Enterprises for a cost of $5,000.
Move, Mr. Chair.
Second. Discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm opposed to spending this money for this when we don't have enough money for hazardous.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm opposed to spending this $5,000 for this when we don't have enough money to give to the hazardous waste recycling committee. I feel something like that is more important to this county.
Any other discussion?
Ostergren.
No.
Wolfson.
No.
Censor.
Yes.
Russo.
Yes.
Milburn.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Motion number 2, please.
Move to appoint Charles Quinney to the Airport Advisory Committee for a 2-year term beginning 1/1/2023 and ending 12/31/2024.
So move.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Discussion? Clerk, can you please call roll?
Censor.
Yes.
Wolfson.
Yes.
Russo.
Yes.
Milburn.
Yes.
Ostergren.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Motion number 3.
Move to enter into an interlocal agreement with Crawford County, see attached, for the purpose of allowing the Crawford County Housing Department to facilitate the administration of Roscommon County's CDBG program income, TI, emergency housing grants available through Roscommon County for the benefit of the residents of Roscommon County. Agreement to begin April 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2024.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Discussion? Only thing I would like to say is I worked with Laura for several years with the housing department. It's sad. I also sat on the board, but prior to sitting on that board, I worked with her for several years for the housing department. And we lost something good, but hopefully this will help out. We take baby steps and we'll see what happens down the road. Any other discussion? Clerk, can you please call roll?
Wolfson.
Yes.
Ostergren.
Yes.
Russo.
Yes.
Censor.
Yes.
Milburn.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Number 4.
Move to confirm the continuation of the Roscommon County Recycling Committee and reaffirm its purpose to oversee the promotion of household hazardous waste disposal, recycling education, increased recycling opportunities in the county, and promotion of waste prevention.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Discussion. I'd like to see this get back up on its feet. Any other discussion? Clerk, call roll, please.
Censor.
Yes.
Ostergren.
Yes.
Russo.
Yes.
Wolfson.
Yes.
Milburn.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Number 5.
Move to approve the following language change in section A, subsection 10 of the Roscommon County Administrator Controller job description from serve as custodian of and have charge of the operation, maintenance, and repairs of the county courthouse, building and grounds, lake level control structures, and repairs to the county jail. 2, serve as the custodian of and have charge of the operation, maintenance, and repairs of all county-owned buildings and grounds, including repairs to the county jail.
So move.
Second.
Discussion.
Yes.
Okay.
Is this agreeable with the county controller?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Clerk, call roll, please.
Milburn.
Yes.
Ostergren.
Yes.
Wolfson.
Yes.
Censor.
Yes.
Russo.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Motion number 6.
Okay. Move to adopt resolution number 2023-03-01, Resolution supporting and affirming the Second Amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America. Resolution supporting and affirming the Second Amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America. Whereas Article 1, Section 1 of our Michigan Constitution states, all political power is inherent in the people. Government is instituted for their equal benefit, security, and protection. And whereas the primary and most important duty of any elected official is to uphold the United States Constitution and the Michigan Constitution, including all amendments. And whereas the Second Amendment of our federal Constitution states, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And whereas the Second Amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America, ratified in 1791 as part of the Bill of Rights, protects the right of the people to keep and bear arms. And whereas Article 1, Section 6 of our Michigan Constitution states, every person has a right to keep and bear arms for the defense of himself and the state. And whereas in its recent ruling in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin, the United States Supreme Court ruled that our citizens not only have the right to keep and bear arms in their homes for self-defense, but also in public places. And whereas the United States Supreme Court in District Court of Columbia v. Heller, 554 U.S. 570, 2008, affirmed an individual's right to possess a firearm unconnected with service in a militia and to use that firearm for traditionally lawful purposes, such as self-defense within the home. And whereas the United States Supreme Court in McDonald v. Chicago, 561 U.S. 742, 2010, affirmed that the right of an individual to keep and bear arms as protected under the Second Amendment is incorporated to the state by the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment. And whereas the citizens of Michigan have not granted power to the state to determine determine what type of arms we may keep and bear, nor has the Supreme Court of the United States ever ruled that there is such a restriction in our Constitution. And whereas any legislation passed by the Michigan legislature and signed into law by the governor of Michigan or by the United States Congress and signed into law by the president that violates the constitutional rights of the citizens of Michigan and the United States is by definition unconstitutional as declared by the Supreme Court. And whereas it is the desire of Roscommon County Board of Commissioners to declare its support of the Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States of America and to the provisions of the Michigan Constitution which protect Roscommon County citizens' individual rights to keep and bear arms. Now therefore be it resolved by the Roscommon County Board of Commissioners that the County of Roscommon supports the constitutional rights of the citizens of Michigan and more broadly the citizens of these United States. And be it further resolved that this board will not support the enforcement of any law passed by the Michigan legislature and signed into law by the governor or passed by the United States Congress and signed into law by the president that is ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. And be it further resolved that the Roscommon County Board of Commissioners hereby directs the clerk for the Board of Commissioners to forward a copy of this resolution to the leaders of both parties in the Michigan State House of Representatives, the Michigan State Senate, the governor of the state of Michigan, U.S. Congressman Bergman, Senator Stabenow and Peters, and the Michigan Association of Counties.
When do we have discussion?
After the motion and second.
I just want to make that up. Second.
Discussion?
Yes, I have a little bit to talk about.
Sure.
I'm going to pass out the board a couple of things. One, letter from Edward Stern, part of the resolution. I have written permission from him to read this into the minute, into the meeting. Tim Morley. I'm also going to read into the minutes.
We already received this. Emails.
Yeah. Well, good. I would like to read it into the minutes. I would like to read it into the meeting. Thank you. First one is from the county, so everybody out here, we have it all, but the people out here do not have it. County of Roscommon, Office of Sheriff. Hi, Scott, and I think he's referring to Scott Sutherland. Thank you for reaching out. I'm a firm supporter of our Constitution and specifically, in this case, the rights provided to our citizens in the Second Amendment. I see these rights under clear attack in Lansing, which is certainly very troubling. This is reminiscent of the lockdowns and restrictions that were implemented in the state during the COVID pandemic. Many suggested that certain restrictions were unconstitutional outside the scope of the state's authority. That clearly did turn out to be true, as the courts agreed. During this time, we in law enforcement were left to determine how to properly enforce regulations, as it is our job to do so, while also upholding the constitutional rights of the citizenry, as we have taken an oath to do. It certainly appears that in the near future, we will be facing similar dilemmas. I have reviewed the proposed resolution and agree with the legal foundation that you have laid on these issues. However, this resolution seems to function only as a symbolic or ceremonial document and does not govern the operation of our criminal justice and court systems of Roscommon County. I believe that our county overwhelmingly supports the rights of the people to keep and bear arms, and I will continue to make best judgments possible in fulfilling my duties within the office of sheriff. I believe that much of this new legislation will be signed into law, thus leading to extensive litigation as to its constitutionality. All of our law enforcement leaders, I'm sorry, I had my mic on the whole time. All of our law enforcement leaders will be in the precarious position of determining how to proceed as we weigh our duty to act and the constitutionality of law. Please pray for us as we seek wisdom in these difficult times. The resolution by the Roscommon County Republicans in support of the right of people to keep and bear arms for the defense of themselves and state. The Roscommon County Republicans, Roscommon County, State of Michigan states that whereas Article 1, Section 1 of our Michigan Constitution states that all political power is inherent in the people, government is instituted in their equal benefit, security, and protection. Whereas the primary and most important duty of any elected official is to protect the citizens and their constituency, not only from physical harm, but also from infringement in their sovereign rights. Whereas the Second Amendment of our federal Constitution states, a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Whereas the Second Amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America, ratified in 1791 as part of the Bill of Rights, protects the right of the people to keep and bear arms. And whereas Article 1, Section 6 of our Michigan Constitution states, every person has the right to keep and bear arms for the defense of himself and the state. Whereas in its recent ruling in the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled that our citizens not only have the right to keep and bear arms in their homes for self-defense, but also in public places. Whereas the United States Supreme Court in the District of Columbia versus Heller, 544 U.S. 570 in 2008, affirmed an individual's right to possess a firearm unconnected with service in a militia and to use that firearm for traditionally lawful purposes, such as self-defense within the home. And whereas the United States Supreme Court in McDonald versus Chicago, 561 U.S. 742, 2010, affirmed that the right of an individual to keep and bear arms is, as protected under the Second Amendment, is incorporated to the state by the due process clause of the 14th Amendment. And whereas the citizens of Michigan have not granted power to the state to determine what type of arms we may keep and bear, nor has the Supreme Court of the United States ever ruled that there's such a restriction in our United States Constitution. Whereas any legislation passed by the Michigan legislature and signed into law by the governor of Michigan that violates the constitutional rights referenced above is by definition unconstitutional. Now, therefore, it is hereby resolved by unanimous vote of the Republican delegates elected by the people of Roscommon County and the general membership of the Roscommon County Republicans in attendance, Roscommon County, Michigan, that we declare our support of the God-given right of the people of Michigan and these United States to keep and bear any form of arms they deem necessary to defend themselves, their family, friends, and members of the general public against violent attack from criminal elements, and should it become necessary from a tyrannical government. Be it further resolved that the board directs the secretary to forward a copy of this resolution to the townships of Roscommon County, the Roscommon County Board of Commissioners, the leaders of both parties in the Michigan State House of Representatives and the Michigan State Senate, the Attorney General of the state of Michigan, and the governor of the state of Michigan. This resolution was adopted by the Roscommon County Republicans by regular meeting held at Markey Township Hall, 7400 East Houghton Lake Drive, Houghton Lake, Michigan, by a voice vote of all members in attendance who are elected and serving on this 16th day of March, 2023. The resolution was offered by Dick Shutter, supported by Bill Cornelia. The vote was unanimous with no opposition. The resolution was declared and adopted. Kim Morley, Chairman, Roscommon County Republicans. Thank you. Any other discussion?
I've been taking notes, Mr. Chairman, and so I may be a little fragmented as I try to wrap this up. This is not a Republican or Democrat issue. We always need to listen to our constituents. I happen to be a life member of the NRA, and I do agree this is strictly a symbolic and not enforceable amendment or a resolution. I believe our citizens have the right to bear arms. As I said, I am a life member of the NRA. However, we need to preserve and protect our entire Constitution. However, I believe this resolution is possibly in direct defiance of the Constitution, which I have sworn my sacred oath and honor to protect and uphold. I will never violate the Constitution of the United States and the office to which I have the privilege and sworn duty to defend as a county commissioner. I will always follow the law of the state and our great nation. Therefore, I will vote no on this proposal.
Yes. I'd like to make mention that nowheres in our resolution does it say we are going to be a sanctuary county. And nowheres in this resolution does it say we are going to disregard any constitutional law. Thank you.
First of all, I want everyone to know that I am a firm believer in the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms. However, after I read this resolution, among other resolutions that I had read of the same, there are a few areas with the wording that are very concerning to me. One being any legislation passed. And then on the second page, it talks about the board will not support the enforcement of any law passed by the Michigan legislature. With that being said, I would have a hard time supporting the resolution as it is written.
Comment?
Yes.
It further states that any laws ruled unconstitutional by a Supreme Court.
But the bill is for the Second Amendment. That leaves a very vague opening in my mind when I read it. It should have been more specifically oriented towards the Second Amendment.
Here. Mr. Spencer's right. I circled it right here. Any law. It's very ambiguous. It's disconcerting, and it's, yeah, what she said.
Dave, it looks like you're the tiebreaker.
You know, if I could, Mr. Chair, since you're apparently pensive. You know, I listened to Mr. Johnson. I saw he's up on the screen. Took a copy of this. Wasn't really prepared to talk about it, but since we seem to have a moment of silence. Mr. Johnson says you took great offense, stating that the reason we have this problem is because, well, that's another topic. He reminded the commissioners that when people refer to government tyrants, that we could be them. When does this stop? Johnson said. I appreciated his comments.
Any other discussion? Clerk, call roll, please.
Ostergren,
Yes.
Censor,
No.
Wolfson,
Yes.
Russo,
Yes.
Milburn.
No.
Resolution adopted.
Committee reports. Mr. Esserman.
Yes, a couple of them. I went to the mental health seminar with Darlene, and I'm sure she'll go over all that. So I'm not going to double up on that, but I did go to the Michigan Shoreline Partnership seminars that they had. I'm going to pass out. This is some material that I gathered there for everybody, and I was able to meet with several people there, and we talked about one of the major issues that we have here on Higgins Lake for those that are opposed to maintaining our legal levels on Higgins. I'll talk about that in a second. One of the major issues we have on Higgins Lake and people that are opposed to the legal levels are shoreline erosion. And a few years ago, I went to the McMillan Center and attended a seminar that the Higgins Lake Foundation had put on. And it was very informative. They said almost all shoreline erosion can be fixed. Reclamation can take places where shorelines have been absorbed, and it shouldn't, and no matter where the shoreline has been eroded, it can be repaired. I also met, and sometime in the next few meetings, I'm going to have a gentleman come in from a company called GEI Consultants, who does a lot of work on shoreline erosion issues. And when I was talking to him, he said, it doesn't matter where the water level is, you're going to have shoreline erosion. It's going to happen. You've got water and earth coming together, you're going to have shoreline erosion. And the best things you can do is put in, allowable prevention measures such as native vegetation, riprap, things like that. So I'm going to have him come in and talk about that. He's a senior restoration ecologist and was part of the Michigan Shoreline, I can't remember the last part of their name, Conservancy or something like that. And of which, of course, Eagle was there attending that and so forth. So I'm really excited about this. We're going to be able to come up with a solution for people that are having shoreline erosion problems. We're going to be able to get the levels back up to where they should be, according to the court order. And as we move forward, we need to keep all those things in mind. Thank you very much.
Mark.
You got it, Mr. Chair.
Committee reports.
I think I've talked enough and heard enough today. At District Hills this afternoon, and we got economic development tomorrow morning. We had COA. We had,
yeah,
I'm kind of fuzzy here, COA and Northern Michigan Counties Association up in Traverse City. That's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Yes, I went to Sabo Township meeting last Saturday. They are now passed an ordinance to have local building inspections. I attended the LPT meeting the other day, and it's come to our attention that if you were taken to Munson Hospital and needs to be transported somewhere else, they are sending you by an ambulance service that is not one of your local ones, and the cost can be greatly increased to you. I don't know how to rectify that, but it does exist. So.
Darling.
I attended on March 6th, the substance use disorder meeting, and February 24th was Michigan Works.
I attended an agenda meeting, a lot of phone calls. Number 14, public comment. I think we heard enough from them today.
No, I have another comment if I get the chance.
The what?
I just put this back in and they're
public comment. You have to come up here, state your name.
they're still
Turn your mic on. Turn your mic on, sir, and state your name.
Gary Shepard, I live in Houghton Lake. Denton Township, I'm sorry. You know, with this resolution that everyone's out under their collar about, I learned a long time ago to respect guns by my father. He took me up north deer hunting for the first time as a teenager. Set up against a tree. He had a German Mauser he brought back from World War II with a scope. All I remember was firing it and being on my keister. And I had a black eye for about 2 months. I've hunted ever since then. Later on in my life, 3 times, not once, I've been accosted with a gun. One in my head, one in my back, one in my gut. My daughters say I have 9 lives. By the grace of God, I'm here. My point is, this constitutional issue isn't just a one-sided event going on in this country right now. Our Constitution is being shredded in many ways that many of us are all aware. The government is it seems, is coming after us in every way they can. In 1980s, crime was at the highest level since the Al Capone and Elliot Ness days. Bill Clinton passed common sense laws for banning assault rifles, what they call assault rifles. Obama used it until his little trick down at the border with, I can't remember the name of the plan to send guns down there, but it went away with him. Hillary said all through her career, we need common sense laws. Justin Trudeau used the same term 2 years ago when he eliminated 1,500 types of guns that had clips or whatever. So they have nothing but shotguns now in Canada. And Obama has said, I'm sorry, Biden has said over the years, and just recently, that he too wants to take away anything that has a clip. Now, being a victim of 3 times of being assaulted, I'm a carrier, and I drive down to Detroit a lot. And I've seen incidents down there where they're playing cowboys and Indians on the freeway. I've seen cars chasing each other. I've never actually seen a shooting, but I've heard the shots being fired as they passed us 100 miles an hour. In this country right now, our rights are being taken away and chipped away through executive orders, through executive fiat by Congress and by our local government or whatever. My point is this. Right now, if we look back in our recent history, we saw the people leaving Afghanistan hanging from planes. 100 and some odd thousand of them came here, and they're in Michigan. We don't know if they were Taliban or who they were. Our borders are open. We have drugs coming across the border. We've had over 5 million illegal entries, or what we call illegal, because the laws aren't being applied. People are being arrested, returned on the streets to do their specialty and murder all over again, or whatever it is. Our government is just out of control right now, and they're doing things through executive, like I said, executive fiat, and also through ballot proposals. It's not just guns that are being eroded. Hate speech. If I gave a 5-year-old child a Playboy book, I'd be arrested. But at school, it's legal. There's just so much going on. It's not just this. So I read the paper every week, and I know that DEA just opened an office a couple of years ago up in Traverse City. Every other line in that paper in the court section, methamphetamine, methamphetamine, methamphetamine. It's rampant up here. We have these people going into the country, we don't know where they're at. Last year, I went downstate. I got up in the morning. I sleep pretty hard. I woke up in the morning and both my front and back door had big dents in them, in the handle. Somebody tried breaking in my house. I wasn't even aware of it. I have a gun, but it's for that purpose. I hunt. It's for that purpose. I carry it because I've been a victim of it. That's my right. If that right's taken away, I don't even want to think about it. But you folks have a responsibility, and we appreciate your confidence in all this, but I think no matter what your side of the political aisle is, you have to be looking at the whole picture of what's going on in this country right now to realize this isn't just the only thing that we're up against. It's tyranny. And our forefathers gave us our rights. Our state constitution, as it said in there earlier, is to protect us and secure us. We don't have that security. We can't have a gun with a clip. We can't protect our homes. Criminals don't register guns. Honest people do. And the way they're coming after us, the Constitution is being destroyed all over the place. Hate speech, arrests, for numerous things, and we're all aware of it. And it's frightening. This is not the America that we were born into and we want to pass on to our kids. Not me anyway. Anyway, I just want to say this. If our forefathers were alive today and see what's going on, they'd pick up arms again.
Hello?
Hello.
I got just one brief announcement. I want to invite you and everybody else here. Crawford County Republicans on April 14th are bringing your state representative and our Congressman Bergman's office to Dead Bear Brewing in Grayling on April 14th, 7 to 9 p.m. They're going to give an update on what's happening in state and federal government. Thank you.
Hello again, afternoon, Tim O'Rourke. First, I want to thank the board for their consideration on their resolution. I think that's the way we're supposed to work. You're supposed to listen to the facts. You're supposed to come to your own decisions, and appreciate the thoughtfulness of what you move forward with. Want to reiterate, I'm friends with the majority of the people sitting behind us and on this board. That doesn't change because of a vote one way or the other. Want to reiterate what the chair has told you in the past. You do your job and then you walk outside and you make friends again and you go on to the next issue. There's always going to be a follow-up issue. And I just appreciate that you took the time to listen to all the sides and then made your decision based on what your beliefs are. And I think it was a thoughtful decision for all five of you. I would like to be considered to sit on your committee on your millage for Headley. If you remember, I was the last one that got a road commission millage countywide. I think I can help you. I think I've got some great ideas. I'd love to serve with you. And it's up to you guys. But thank you.
Anybody else?
I have something.
As far as public comment, I want to be very clear with the resolution and why I voted the way that I did. It was strictly the wording. I read the wording in the Republican Party resolution, which is also the one that Commissioner Ostergen handed out. Had I had something like this, my vote would have been different. It was strictly the wording.
Yeah, if you have information like that, pass it out.
Right, I thought that we had passed, this resolution had been passed amongst ourselves before Rex and I put it together, and I know Jody had a copy. Jody, you did not apparently pass this around to anybody. It was part of today's.
No, they all had a copy of this.
That's what I thought.
I had a copy, but it was after it had been written and was already in the agenda and passed out to the public.
Okay, I did not know how, well, Darlene, we're learning a lot about the operation.
Okay, I have a couple, thank you. A couple of people on Zoom.
Yeah, I had a further comment if I can speak now. Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Again, this is Greg Seemack, and again, I'm a resident of Garrish Township. I wanted to comment a little further about the continued involvement of Ms. Hissong and the rushing forward with the setting up of a special assessment district at Higgins Lake. In an earlier public statement, Case Shepke mentioned that there were two things that Ms. Hissong said earlier that were not so. Ms. Hisson also mentioned or implied in her earlier statement that she had spoken to the township supervisors. I'm assuming she means Garish Township and Lyon Township, and gotten their input about special assessment district boundaries. I know for a fact that she has not spoken to the Garish Township supervisor about such boundaries, and that simply is another embellished comment. I question some of the other statements that she's made, but I have not yet determined how accurate my concerns might be. But I do think that she has given this board inaccurate information often enough so that the board should look for alternative representation for that reason alone. Further, Jody mentioned that the county may choose to hire the best, and that's fine. But that does not mean that the board is required to only choose the best or the most expensive. I think there should be some scale to what we spend to accomplish our goals. And I would like to suggest again that alternative representation be considered by the board for the special assessment districts going forward. That's all I had, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Hello?
I had someone before me, right?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Go ahead, Leroy.
Thank you. I have to say, and I can't turn on my video. Oh, there we go. Okay. All right. I have to say I'm disappointed in the commission's vote today. I mean, especially since I quoted for you what the actual Supreme Court justices had said that wrote the majority opinions that were quoted and cited for the basis that the Supreme Court has never, ever ruled that the Second Amendment has limits, because it clearly does. I'd like to thank Mr. Milburn and Ms. Center for their votes in what seemed to me to be along clearly party lines. And it saddens me. For 55 years, I've lived in Roscommon County. I apparently now live in Roscommon compound. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I just want to pass out written comments of the copy of what I talked last week. Either be one more copy.
Awesome.
Are you going to read it? No, I already read it. I read it there. Last page and a half was.
Is there any other public comment?
Oh, I have another one. If anybody else wants one. That's
Adjournment.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second. All in favor?
Oh, yeah, yeah.